Yang Jian lay sprawled on his bed, head resting lazily on a pillow while his phone continued to charge beside him. Then, without warning, the world around him dimmed. Everything faded, and darkness consumed him. When Yang Jian awoke, it felt as though he was floating in a void. His mind was a fog, thoughts slow and fragmented. He struggled to open his eyes. When he finally did, all he could see were blurry, shifting shadows, chaotic like a dream warped by static. Distant sounds echoed, moans, groans, perhaps whispers of the wind. It was disorienting. "Am I dreaming?" he muttered, shaking his head. But then something solidified in his vision. From the murky white blurs emerged a shape so massive and terrifying, it nearly made his heart stop. A beast, white, cold, ferocious. Its enormous body was coated in flawless scales that shimmered like ice crystals beneath pale light, each one neatly interlocked in an impenetrable pattern. A pair of massive bat-like wings extended from its back, with thick membranes stretched between muscular veins. The creature wasn't just beautiful, it radiated raw, primal power. Yang Jian felt suffocated just looking at it. The beast's vertical pupils locked onto him. It wasn't attacking. It was waiting. Then, just as abruptly, Yang Jian's body trembled. A torrent of memories surged into his mind, foreign, ancient, and profound. It was like a river of knowledge had broken free within him. Magic, history, instincts, combat, flight, everything. And then clarity came. He was no longer human. The truth slammed into him like thunder. He had been reborn as a white dragon, and the majestic creature before him was his mother. The white dragon mother narrowed her eyes, her breath sending wisps of frost curling across the floor, freezing it on contact. Her gaze pierced into Yang Jian. No, into the young dragon before her. But something about him caught her attention. Newborn white dragons were supposed to be no larger than a wolfhound, but this one, he was already the size of tiger. His muscles were far more defined, and his scales, though white and reflective like polished ice, bore a thin black ring around his neck, a collar of dark scales starkly contrasting the purity of his body. A mutation. The mother dragon exhaled a deep, threatening snort. Ice crystals scattered. Was he just a beast? A defective spawn driven only by primal instinct? Her eyes gleamed with dangerous light. Sensing the danger, Yang Jian instinctively opened his mouth and let syllables flow from his throat, a name passed down through the very bloodline of dragons. Garen Aurelia Wall-Libel, Goslar Digisol. The sound echoed with ancient power. It was his true dragon name, and it saved his life. A moment passed, then another. The tension dissolved. The white dragon mother closed her eyes and settled back, accepting her child as one of her own. Yang Jian, now Garen, let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The hunger in his stomach became unbearable, so he turned toward the broken shell beside him and began to eat. To his surprise, it tasted good. Cold, crunchy, like chilled chocolate. The shards were filled with nutrients essential for a baby dragon's growth. His first meal in this new world. As he ate, Garen reflected on the transformation. He carefully examined his reflection in his mother's shimmering scales. Platinum eyes stared back, brilliant, rare, and piercing. His body was long and lean, scales smooth and radiant, with powerful limbs and a wingspan longer than his own body. Everything about him screamed potential, except for the black scales. That ring, a mutation. It's probably nothing, but I hope it's a good one, he thought. Some dragons with mutations became weak and sickly. Others, legendary. He lowered his gaze to his claws, sharp, curved, and deadly. Yang Jian is gone, he whispered. From now on, I'm Garen. A white dragon. He could feel the ancient legacy within his blood, the memories of powerful beings, of soaring through skies above burning kingdoms, of clashing with giants, demons, and gods. This world was vast, and it had just opened up to him. Suddenly, a crack echoed beside him. Garen's ears twitched. He turned to see another egg, the size of a millstone, beginning to shift. Thin fractures spread across its surface like spiderwebs. A few seconds later, with one last push, a baby dragon burst out. This one didn't pause. With a soft but proud roar, the hatchling declared, "Hill Rose Vanessa, Rebecca." The voice was high and light, a young girl's tone, delicate and melodious. Garen blinked. A dragon lowly? He didn't know whether to laugh or be worried. But one thing was certain. He wasn't alone anymore. Garen glanced at Hill. Unlike him, her form was more refined and powerful. Elegantly built, her body curved with grace instead of bulk. The white scales covering her slender figure gleamed with a soft luster, smooth and almost silken to the eye. Her tail, long and round, tapered with perfect symmetry from root to tip, a flawless arc of dragonkind beauty. She was, by all standards of draconic aesthetics, an exceptionally beautiful young female. And Garen noticed. Unfortunately, the moment that thought surfaced, he froze. His chest tightened, panic briefly flaring in his mind. What the hell am I thinking? But it wasn't just him. Part of it stemmed from the vast wave of inherited dragon instincts now blended with his once human mind. Those instincts reshaped his perception, his understanding of beauty, of strength, of life itself. Dragons, as he had come to realize, had peculiar tastes. To put it mildly, their definition of beauty was extremely inclusive. Even slime creatures could look appealing under those ancient, alien eyes. Worse still, dragons had no qualms about forming bonds across species, or even within their own bloodlines. The concept of incest simply didn't exist in their world. Dragons are dangerously open-minded, Garen concluded grimly. And yet, when he looked at Hill, tail flicking, eyes innocent, quietly nibbling her eggshell, he couldn't deny her charm. It was in her design. After Hill had spoken her true name, she sat down and focused on eating. Her long tail gently swayed as she chomped down on the eggshell, unaware of her brother's confused thoughts. Does her egg taste different than mine? Driven by curiosity and a little bit of mischief, Garen padded closer and pretended to survey the area. Then, with a casual sweep of his tail, he dragged a few pieces of Hill's shattered eggshell toward himself. Crunch, 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 creamy. It was soft, with a faint sweetness, like ice cream blended with fresh snow. And it even smelled a little like Hill. Not bad, Garen thought, chewing contentedly. But just as he was considering a second helping, a gust of cold breath drifted over him. He turned slowly. A massive dragon head loomed just meters away, silent, unblinking. The white dragon mother. She had seen everything. Though Hill remained blissfully unaware, her mother had caught Garen in the act. Yet she did nothing. Her pale yellow eyes merely followed him, studying his choices with a strange, unreadable gaze. Among dragonkind, white dragons were notoriously indifferent toward their offspring. While most dragons were distant and selfish, they still showed some level of care for their young, if only to ensure the survival of their bloodline, as instructed by the evil dragon goddess, Tiamat. But not the whites. White dragons often bred out of instinct or pleasure, not responsibility. They rarely stuck around to nurture their hatchlings. And Garen's mother? She was still young herself, barely in her 90s, not yet a true adult by draconic standards. This was her first clutch. She had no experience, no preparation, and even less interest in mothering. Her scales still shimmered with youthful polish, though some had begun to roughen with age. In short, she wasn't ready for this, and Garen could feel it. Still, under her watchful stare, he awkwardly forced a smile. With a reluctant sigh, he took the last bit of Hill's eggshell he hadn't finished and nudged her with his claw. She turned, blinked at him, then accepted the piece without hesitation, chewed it down without a word of thanks, and returned to eating her own shell. Well, that was humbling. Even though he was almost twice her size, Hill seemed unimpressed by his gesture. That's the white dragon temperament for you. Self-centered, proud, and emotionally frigid. Garen's stomach growled again. The eggshell wasn't enough. Newborn dragons grew fast, too fast. Their hunger was bottomless, their bodies demanding nutrients by the hour. Most dragon mothers would bring fresh prey after the birth, but their mother? She had brought nothing. Garen's hunger turned feral. He eyed the icy floor. Dragons could eat almost anything. Their stomachs were legendary, capable of dissolving metals, minerals, magic artifacts. Even dirt, even stone. But most dragons wouldn't want to. They had pride. Hunger was not humiliation until it pushed them that far. And Garen was getting close. He lowered his head. Crack! His teeth scraped across the ground, and pain shot through his jaw. Only a faint white scratch was left on the glacial surface. It's too hard, too cold, too damn solid. This wasn't forest soil or mountain clay. This was the ice field. Their lair, shaped like a coiled serpent, was a pristine palace of ice, sculpted with care, sealed with frost magic, and hard as steel. The nest walls and ceiling sparkled with mirror-like crystals, likely conjured by his mother. Even the floor was frozen. A younger Garen might have admired its beauty. The current Garen just wanted a bite of something edible. Sore and frustrated, Garen slumped down and groaned, opening his mouth in a theatrical plea. He pointed to his empty maw, then toward the white dragon mother. "Feed me, please, beautiful and benevolent mother," he wanted to say. What actually came out was a series of strained, pitiful growls. His vocal cords were still too delicate to form proper speech. Even speaking his true name had left his throat sore. It would be weeks before he could properly communicate. So he resorted to pantomime, pointing, pleading, posturing. His mother blinked. Then she tilted her head slightly and looked at him like he was an idiot. That was it. No growl, no snarl, no food, just pure, icy indifference. Garen curled up, defeated. Life as a dragon isn't as glorious as I thought. He shut his eyes and sighed. The hunger remained. The shame lingered. But at least he wasn't alone.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
For food, he would risk his life. He would use all his coquettishness. When he was still a human, the cats raised by Garen's family were like this. Usually, no matter how noisy they were, when they were hungry, they would put on a pitiful appearance and rub the back of his hand or pants. Then, Garen would be unable to resist giving them food and water. Garen hoped that this move would also work on the white dragon mother. However, perhaps just as most humans only felt that other creatures' cubs were cute and their own cubs were ugly, the white dragon mother looked at the stupid and cute baby dragon with a calm reaction. Her gaze was sharp and cold. She did not speak and only stared at Garen silently. It made him shiver, and he immediately did not dare to approach. The kinship between evil dragons is no different from nothing. Resentfully pretending that nothing had happened, Garen looked at the other 4 dragon eggs that were still intact. These eggshells were also swaying slightly, and fine cracks spread on the surface. The baby dragons inside were moving her body, wanting to break out of their shells. However, it seemed that this would still take some time. He did not know how many dragon brothers and sisters would be born in the end. Dragons could give birth to about 2 to 6 dragons at a time. The white dragon mother had given birth to 6 this time, and was considered outstanding among dragons. The most common number of dragon eggs should be 3 or 4. About 90% of the dragon mothers were in this category, including the similarly rare ones who had 2 eggs. Dragons like the white dragon mother amounted to about 5%. When the other siblings are born, it shouldn't be too much for me to snatch some eggshells. The size of those eggs could only reach Garen's chest. The ones inside were probably all normal baby dragons. Garen lowered his head to look at his clearly much stronger and taller dragon body. He immediately became arrogant and felt that he could fight for alone. He subconsciously licked the corner of his mouth. Garen leaned against the wall and looked straight ahead as he secretly moved towards the dragon egg. The white dragon mother was still staring at him, so Garen had no choice but to hide his thoughts. However, he did not believe that the white dragon mother could stare at him without blinking. Even if he was discovered, perhaps the white dragon mother would still not stop him. After all, it was fine to steal Hill's eggshell. However, because he did not know her bottom line, Garen returned the smallest eggshell fragment. As soon as this thought appeared, the ground of the nest covered in hard ice crystals shook slightly. Garen turned around and saw that the white dragon mother had moved her body as if she was stretching her muscles and bones. She glanced at the other dragon eggs that were swaying slightly. There was no emotion in the pale yellow dragon pupils. This was not the first time Garen had seen this gaze. Even if the white dragon's intelligence was only at the bottom of the dragon race, and its thinking method was closer to that of a beast hunter compared to other races, the white dragon's intelligence was still not low. However, they preferred using their instincts to think. The white dragon mother, who was about to become an adult, definitely had intelligence that surpassed ordinary humans. She probably could not be bothered to pay attention to her cubs. Next, the white dragon mother slowly stood up. The shadow of her body immediately enveloped Garen, and the pressure brought about by her huge body assaulted him. It made Garen feel a little suffocated. After stretching her wings, the white dragon mother walked to the entrance of the nest with her heavy and huge body. She looked back and turned around. With a flap of her dragon wings, her huge figure disappeared into the snow outside the nest. Garen slowly moved his feet towards the entrance of the nest. After approaching, he focused his gaze outside the nest. The scene in front of him immediately made Garen gasp. Pristine snowflakes fell from the sky and landed on the ground that was already covered in snow. Whistling, a cold wind that was almost visible to the naked eye shuttled through the faint cracks of the glacier. The sobbing sounds resounded in this vast world that seemed to be formed by ice, snow, cold wind, and crystals. In the distance, the winter wolf that Garen could not see clearly was lying low in the snow, leaving claw marks. In the blink of an eye, it was covered by the snow. The frost tiger lay in ambush in the snow, only revealing a pair of dim and wild eyes as it patiently waited for its prey to approach. In this extremely cold world covered in silver, there were still a large number of tenacious creatures trying their best to survive. It intertwined into a beautiful painting of freedom. This was a scene that Garen had never seen before. He could not explain his current mood, but he was greatly shocked. Collecting his thoughts, Garen raised his dragon head and looked over. In the distance was a huge mountain range that seemed to have no end. It was as thick as a dragon's spine and was covered in snow, as if it was still reflecting a crystal-clear faint light. From east to south, it stretched for thousands of kilometers. It was composed of countless mountains and valleys, as if it was a barrier created by nature, separating the northern ice fields from the Warwick Duchy that belonged to humans over there. Northern ice fields, cold, desolate desert. Due to the existence and uniqueness of the dragon inheritance, to a certain extent, dragons were creatures that were born into the world with knowledge. Garen only looked down from the steep cliff nest, and the name of the area he was in appeared in his mind. Dragons could become one of the top creatures in many planes. Apart from their strong bodies, sharp claws, and powerful spell abilities, the dragon's inheritance that allowed them to be born into the world with knowledge was also crucial. The white dragon mother's nest was built on the cliff of an ice mountain, more than 500 meters away from ground. After taking a deep breath of the cold air from 100 meters above, Garen stuck his head out and looked down. Through the dense snow, Garen only saw layers of thick white snow quietly rising. Recently, it had always been snowing heavily. The entire northern ice fields was covered in snow, and the true appearance of the ice plain could not be seen. He flapped his wide dragon wings slightly. He had a feeling that he might be able to land safely from 500 meters in the air. Without really trying to fly out of the nest, Garen slowly returned. Without the existence of the white dragon mother to attract his attention, Garen's gaze was immediately attracted by the object that was emitting various lights in the deepest part of the nest. Looking carefully, there were piles of excellent weapons, armor, scrolls, and all kinds of glowing gems. Crystal, agate, jade, diamond. Most of them were ordinary gems, but many were surging with magic power. Diamonds were the most common. The white dragon liked to collect diamonds the most because the light reflected by the dazzling diamonds could make the nest filled with mirror-like ice crystal shine. Garen's platinum dragon eyes were shining, and for a moment, he was a little dazzled. He had also inherited the love and greed of dragons for treasures. Moreover, as a human in his previous life, Garen's greatest hobby was to watch his savings increase bit by bit. The greed of 2 lifetimes overlapped and erupted with shocking power at this moment. Garen subconsciously swallowed his saliva. His mind began to race as he boldly thought of how to turn the gems in front of him into his own. I'll take one, and the smallest one that's the least easily discovered. At this moment, Garen had already thrown away the thought of snatching his brother and sister's eggshell. The benefits of swallowing a gem were even more attractive than those eggshells. The energy contained in the magic gem could allow a baby dragon to grow faster and past the baby dragon stage that was easy to die young. Even ordinary gems had components that helped the growth of the baby dragon's scale bones. The white dragon mother naturally knew, but the dragon's selfish nature and obsession with treasures determined that it was impossible for her to share her gems with the baby dragons. Under normal circumstances, although baby dragons loved treasures, they did not dare to have any designs on their mother's assets. It was not because of respect and filial piety, but because the difference between the two sides was too great and it was extremely easy to be discovered. If they were discovered, they might be beaten up. When the baby dragon grew to the age of a young dragon, and its physique was strong enough, and it had a strong desire to collect treasures and territory, in order to ensure that the increasingly strong baby dragon would not pay attention to it, the dragon mother would bluntly chase them away. Garen's thoughts were already very firm. The period where dragons were most likely to die was the baby dragon stage. It was also because the dragon mother was not very responsible and the baby dragon was relatively weak. In order to pass the baby dragon stage as soon as possible, Garen thought of consuming gemstones. As the weakest young white dragon, he did not have any golden finger or system to accompany him. If he did not dare to take any risks, Garen felt that he might not be able to live until he became an adult. The probability of a young white dragon dying was too high. A weak dragon was a dead dragon. A dragon would not grow fat without gems. Bold dragons were well fed, while cowardly dragons starved to death. Soon, Garen patted his dragon claw and thought of a feasible plan. He immediately ran to the entrance of the nest and observed it. There was still no sign of the white dragon mother in the snow. It seemed that she would at least need some time to return. Returning to the depths of the nest, the dragon's sister, Hill, had already finished eating the eggshell. Her curvy dragon body squatted on the ground like a wolfhound. The dragon head with a smooth mask swayed with Garen's movements. It was obvious that it was staring at him curiously. In the nest, there were only the 2 dragons, Hill and Garen, and those gently swaying dragon eggs. The dragon eggs were boring, and she had nothing to see other than Garen. Garen knew that if Hill saw him taking the white dragon mother's magic gem, she would definitely not hesitate to tell on him when the mother returned and watch contentedly as he was expelled from the nest. My dragon life's first challenge. Borrow a gem from the white dragon mother's treasure vault. The first test is how to successfully shake off the witness. Garen's platinum dragon eyes narrowed slightly, and an unknown light flickered in them. Due to her outstanding intuition, he'll seem to have sensed the malice aimed at her and swayed her long tail uneasily. Garen grinned at Hill and tried his best to appear friendly. However, the young and sharp dragon teeth in his mouth made him look a little cute and fierce. Under the gaze of Hill's wary dragon eyes, Garen slowly walked forward. He was as large as a lion as soon as he was born, much larger than Hill, and extremely oppressive. This malicious approach immediately made Hill retreat. Like a girl being forced by a delinquent, the female dragon, Hill, quickly retreated and leaned against the reflective ice wall. She shook her small dragon head in anger and roared at Garen, putting on a warning and threatening posture, revealing a mouthful of young white dragon teeth. The intelligence of the young white dragons was generally not high, and they were the lowest among the dragons who were also evil dragons. Even with the inheritance of the dragon, they still acted instinctively like wild beasts most of the time. As it grew older, the intelligence of the white dragon would slowly increase. When it was young, it would be similar to ordinary humans. Moreover, most adult white dragons could already use spells and had high intelligence to become mages. However, the current hill was still in the stupid stage and was easily deceived. Don't blink. I will show you a treasure. Garen shook his tightly clenched dragon claws and slowly stretched out. His actions were obvious and immediately attracted Hill's attention. Just as Garen expected, Hill lowered her head and focused her gaze on Garen's dragon claw. Immediately after, with lightning speed, the dragon head with layers of armor suddenly leaned back. Its neck swung like a fully drawn bow, and then it suddenly smashed down. In an instant, the hard bone armor collided. Duong! A crisp and powerful sound sounded in the nest. Thanks to the ice crystal wall, with excellent reflexes, the sound of the bang sounded almost like an empty valley. The lingering sound lingered for a long time. The slightly swaying dragon eggs seemed to have been stimulated and shook even more intensely. The time needed to break out of the shell became slightly earlier. Opposite him, the dragon sister, Hill, did not say a word. Her limbs immediately went soft, her eyes rolled back, and she lay on the ground. She was knocked out by Garen's dragon head hammer. The life force of a dragon was extremely tenacious. With just a hammer strike, he did not have to worry about the safety of his dragon sister. Garen controlled his strength, and she would be unconscious for half an hour at most. Still, dragons are sinister. You can't be deceived so easily in the future. With a thoughtful expression, Garen spoke sincerely to the unconscious Hill. He did not feel guilty for hurting his little dragon sister continuously. Immediately after, Garen excitedly rubbed his dragon claws and quickly ran into the depths of the nest filled with treasures. I've successfully passed the first obstacle. This is the second obstacle: how to make it difficult for the white dragon mother to discover the theft of the treasure. Garen raised his head and looked at the various treasures that could bury him. The evil color was reflected in his platinum dragon eyes. He took a deep breath as his mind raced. The memory of dragons was very developed. Even ancient dragons who had lived for 1,000 years could clearly remember the monsters they had hunted when they were young, the sky that they had flown through, the forest they had stepped through, the soil and rocks they had chewed. Everything was clearly recorded. It was a terrifying amount of memories that could not be forgotten. With this memory and their greedy obsession with treasures, dragons would remember the number of treasures they had. Even if the most inconspicuous one was missing, they would still discover the abnormality. In summary, Garen thought carefully. If he did not want to endure the white dragon mother's anger, he had to satisfy a few conditions if he wanted to deceive her. Firstly, the gem targeted had to be isolated and at the bottom. It could not be placed with other gems, or else there was a high chance that a chain reaction would happen. Secondly, he needed a substitute that looked the same to replace the gap after the gem was taken away. An isolated gem at the bottom. Garen's pupils moved as his gaze wandered among the treasures and quickly locked onto his target. It was a diamond-shaped white crystal located at the left edge of the treasure mountain. It was the size of a baby's fist, and Garen felt a strong desire for it. Garen chose it not only because he was attracted, but also because of the ice-type magic power contained in it. Every breath the dragon took would absorb the elemental energy in the world. Most of the elemental energy would wash through the dragon's body and dissipate, promoting the growth of the dragon's scales and flesh. However, there would still be some remaining stored in their bodies that could react with some unique substances in the dragon's body and be spat out as a killing weapon when needed, which was the dragon breath. Therefore, the dragon breath was not a pure spell ability or spell-like ability. Ordinary spell resistance could not be effective on the dragon breath, and it was a powerful attack method that was very difficult to counterattack. Not to mention those good dragons and gem dragons. The other dragons that belonged to the same evil dragon faction as the white dragon were ranked in the order of average strength of the races: red dragon, blue dragon, green dragon, and black dragon. Their breaths were fire, lightning, poisonous fog, and acid, respectively. These 4 dragon species lived in volcanoes, sand seas, forests, and abysses. The white dragon, living in the ice plain, was the last. It was ranked at the bottom and was also the dragon that had granted the title of Dragon Slayer to adventurers the most. The white dragon's breath was an ice-type magic condensation. Frost dragon breath, ice dragon breath, or snow dragon breath. Different places would have different names according to different habits, but the meaning was the same. Garen paced on the spot and frowned. The curved dragon skin above the dragon eyes was the dragon eyebrows. Use the breath to spit out an ice crystal that's identical to the white crystal. At the same time, I have to adjust the density of my magic power to prevent the white dragon mother from discovering any clues. These did not seem to be things that a baby dragon could do. I can only take an ordinary gem without magic power. Garen was a little unwilling. Then, his gaze was firm as he opened his dragon mouth. Just like how fish were born to swim, as long as he instinctively controlled it, Garen successfully spat out a frost dragon breath. How will I know if I don't try? Even if I don't succeed now, there will always be a chance in the future. If she knew that Garen was so concerned about her treasures, the white dragon mother would definitely curse at him for being unfilial. I'll treat it as accumulating experience and practicing. That was what she thought, but as the baby dragons grew older, the white dragon mother's guard would only grow deeper. Therefore, Garen still hoped to succeed this time. Garen took a deep breath and stretched out his dragon claw, spitting out frost. Then, by adjusting the rhythm of his breathing, the degree of opening and closing of his dragon mouth, the amount of magic power he sent out, and other methods, he controlled the frost to condense into the shape he wanted. Because the white dragon mother would return at any time, Garen's mind quickly spun until it was almost smoking. Under such circumstances, Garen was pleasantly surprised to discover that he seemed to have an abnormal talent in subtle control of magic power, far surpassing the talent of an ordinary dragon. Under his control, the magic energy that should have been wild was surprisingly obedient and tamed. This was originally thought to be the most difficult challenge, but it was not as difficult as Garen had thought. His technique quickly improved. The frost in his mouth was concentrated in an area. From the initial irregular ice crystals to the decent rhombus shape, it only took a few minutes. So, I'm a little genius. Garen stopped his actions and took a deep breath as he studied the diamond-shaped ice crystal in his claw. It already looked the same as the white crystal, but the degree of penetration was slightly inferior. At first glance, it was the same, but if one looked carefully, one would discover the difference. The dragon claw crushed it forcefully. Garen opened his mouth and ate it, unwilling to waste it. He ran to the entrance of the nest and looked out. There was still no sign of the white dragon mother anywhere. Garen was at the entrance of the nest. From time to time, he would look out and slowly adjust the transparency of the ice crystal. During this period, the dragon's sister, Hill, moved her tail and showed signs of waking up. Garen went over and swung the dragon hammer again, causing Hill's eyes to roll back and faint. A few minutes later, Garen looked at the diamond-shaped transparent ice crystal at the tip of the claw with a satisfied expression. He looked out of the nest and immediately ran into the depths. He carefully pinched the magic crystal with his two dragon claws. Throughout the entire process, Garen held his breath in case he touched other gems. If the accumulated treasures were messed up, the white dragon mother would definitely check carefully immediately. Picking up the magic crystal, Garen slowly placed the imitation ice crystal he had created back on the spot. His movements were gentle, like a tiger sniffing a rose. As expected of me, my talent is self-taught. Garen held the beautiful crystalline magic crystal and sniffed it lightly. The magic crystal did not smell of anything. He raised his neck and opened his mouth. Garen released his dragon claw, and the magic crystal fell into his seemingly bottomless mouth. Gulp! Garen swallowed hard, and his empty stomach immediately felt more at ease. At the same time, a chill quickly arose in his stomach and surged like a stream, leading to all parts of his body. Wherever the stream passed, it throbbed slightly, as if there were countless small hands and mouths gently massaging him. The white dragon liked the cold, which was a very comfortable feeling for Garen. It was as if he was on a sunny summer afternoon. After ending his day of exhaustion, he went to find a cute and gentle girl to do a special full-body massage. After that, he would drink a mouthful of frozen carbonated drink. His entire body felt so comfortable that it was unforgettable. Roar! Garen narrowed his eyes slightly and could not help but let out a rippling dragon roar. I have to digest and absorb this magic power as soon as possible. Dragon scales had a powerful magic resistance, especially to the corresponding magic power of their attributes. It was a nightmare of many mages that adult dragons were immune to most spells. As long as Garen closed his dragon mouth, even if the white dragon mother was in front of him, it would be difficult for her to discover the surging ice-type magic power in his body. However, Garen did not want to show too much abnormality. His body size and unique appearance were already obvious enough. If he continued to use his nostrils to vent his energy strangely, he would probably attract the suspicion of the white dragon mother. Garen would not underestimate the white dragon mother, who was almost an adult. So he quickly ran to the nest with the cold wind whistling. He quietly lay on the ground and absorbed the magic power emitted by the magic crystal with all his might, while observing the traces of the white dragon mother. Every time a portion of the crystal melted in the furnace-like dragon's stomach, it would emit waves of frost magic power, causing Garen to roar comfortably. This magic crystal was not considered high-level and was also in the corner of the white dragon mother's collection. However, to a baby dragon that had just been born, it was considered top grade. 10 minutes later, in Garen's vision, a faint white shadow carried the snow that filled the sky and quickly flew towards the entrance of a nest that was hundreds of meters high. Her figure gradually became clear. It was the white dragon mother. Noticing that the white dragon mother was about to return, Garen's heart immediately skipped a beat. Although he felt that the white dragon mother could not discover the magic in his body through his dragon scales, he still had a guilty conscience. Garen wanted to commit the crime as perfectly as possible. Immediately, Garen tried his best to digest the magic crystal in his body. In a short period of time, the concentrated magic waves surged, causing his entire body to be numb and weak. Seeing that the white dragon mother's figure was getting closer and closer, there was still about a quarter of the crystal in Garen's body that he had not digested. With her speed, she would arrive in less than 30 seconds. Garen was anxious. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Faster. The white dragon mother's figure was already very clear. Even through the snow, Garen could see her cold, pale yellow eyes. In an instant, the thin black scales around his neck flashed with a deep light. In his vision, the world of ice and snow that filled the sky froze. Time stopped at this moment, as if a pause button had been pressed. Garen could clearly see the snow that stopped in the air, the cold wind that swept up the snow, and the lifelike stiff white dragon mother in the cold wind. What happened? In a daze, Garen looked up. He seemed to have seen an illusory river that drowned the entire sky. The river water, with a mysterious aura, was flowing at an eternal and constant speed. A huge dragon-shaped phantom circled above, like the master of the illusory river. It was staring at him with its platinum-colored bright dragon eyes. In front of it, the white dragon mother was as small and exquisite as a baby. Black scales were distributed on the huge dragon's body in a wave manner resembling tree rings. It was filled with a mysterious and unique aura. The dragon-shaped phantom smiled meaningfully at Garen. Then, it swung its tail and transformed into a white light that instantly shrunk and entered his body. At the same time, the magic crystal in Garen's body seemed to have experienced a long time in this short moment and disappeared. The magic wave also completely fused into Garen's body, increasing his foundation. At the same time, a large amount of new knowledge appeared in Garen's mind, like the inheritance of a dragon, as if he had always known it. The River of Time, the time ability, time dragon reversal. The future him lent some time to his current him. Garen stared blankly at the disappearing dragon shadow, the cold wind that had begun to whistle again, and the falling snow and ice crystals. A realization immediately arose in his heart, and his mood rose and fell like a roller coaster. It turns out that I'm a time dragon in white dragon skin. Or rather, he was a pseudo-time dragon. In the records of the dragon's inheritance, not to mention those dragon beasts and subspecies with many races, there were 15 common true dragons in the main material plane, which was the plane that Garen was in. There were selfish, violent, chaotic, ferocious, and cruel evil dragons, also called color dragons. There were the red dragon, blue dragon, green dragon, black dragon, and white dragon. The noble and kind, good dragons respected by the righteous faction were also called the metal dragons. According to the ranking of strength, there were 5 types: the golden dragon, the silver dragon, the brass dragon, the bronze dragon, and the copper dragon. Among them, the golden dragon and the silver dragon were the noblest and strongest. They were usually gathered in the dragon lairs and dragon cities. The other 3 were mostly living in the sand sea, the bottom of water bodies, and yellow mountains. In addition, there were also the 5 types of gem dragons who remained neutral between evil and justice: amethyst dragon, crystal dragon, jade dragon, sapphire dragon, and topaz dragon. These gem dragons were very intelligent and had relatively gentle personalities. They generally did not like to participate in battles. Red dragon, blue dragon, green dragon, black dragon, and white dragon. Golden dragon, silver dragon, brass dragon, bronze dragon, and copper dragon. Amethyst dragon, crystal dragon, jade dragon, sapphire dragon, and topaz dragon. The above 15 types were the most common true dragons. Apart from that, there were also many other rare true dragons, such as the pivotal dragon, the heaven dragon, the calamity dragon, and so on. These kinds of dragons sounded ruthless at first glance, but were fewer in number and difficult to find. There were also the last 3 special dragons. They were so rare that it was unimaginable. Even including the planes outside the main material plane that had endless worlds isolated by the crystal wall, it was unknown if there were more than 10 of them in existence. They were the force dragon, the rainbow dragon, and the time dragon that could breathe time, devour time, and pass through the past, present, and future. In the end, it could even become eternal like time itself. They were called legendary dragons. Under the circumstances of natural breeding, these dragons were extremely powerful at birth. They were almost at the top of the food chain. Those with strength below the gods were called legendary creatures. However, because they were extremely rare, the chance of natural reproduction was only 1 in a billion. The greatest probability of birth was still through mutation. Among the 3 legendary dragons, the time dragon was sometimes called the calendar dragon, the epic dragon, the eternal dragon, and so on. At the same time, it was considered the rarest and strongest legendary dragon. Garen digested the new information in his mind. With the help of the reflection of the ice crystals on the wall, he carefully examined the ring of black scales on his neck. In Garen's eyes, this ring of black scales was no longer only a useless decoration like a necklace. At this moment, it was filled with a different meaning. A ring might symbolize returning to the origin of all things, or it might represent the ring of time. It was one of the classic symbols of time. He was a time dragon. He was unable to become a legend at birth, but because he was a mutated dragon, his growth potential was extremely high. The upper limit was slightly higher than ordinary time dragons, and he had the power of frost that belonged to the white dragon. No wonder I'm so much larger than Hill. Even the red dragon, the leader of the evil dragons, is not as large as me when born. Garen took a deep breath and could not help but feel a little excited. As long as he became an adult dragon, he would be one of the creatures at the top of the food chain. The premise was not to be reckless and not to provoke those more terrifying existences. Not to mention those high and mighty gods, just legendary humans, demon lords, and devil kings all had the ability to kill dragons. The white dragon, who was considered weak among the dragons, should be even more careful. In this world that was filled with danger, less than 1/10 of the white dragons could live to adulthood. There were many examples of them dying from accidents and hunting from the dragon's arrogance, and also from human adventurers who sought to slay dragons. Even if he became an adult before he lived long enough, he was far from being able to dominate an area. As for the time dragon, it was completely different. The difference between the time dragon and the white dragon was like the difference between an adult dragon and an ordinary human. An adult time dragon had the qualifications to speak to the gods equally. A mutated time dragon. As long as I can grow up, perhaps I can become a dragon god, or even a main god of the dragon species. No, the goal is greater. I need to work hard and become the god above the gods. Garen felt that his body seemed to have become much lighter. It was a little light as he wantonly imagined an endless future. No matter what creature it was, the moment it was born, the future had endless possibilities. However, as it made choices continuously, the path narrowed, and these possibilities slowly decreased. In the end, they returned to nothingness. At this moment, Garen, who had just been born in the northern ice fields, had endless possibilities. Next, it would depend on his choice. Crack! Garen suddenly raised his hand and slapped himself. His first choice was to stabilize his mind. What am I talking about? Staying alive is the way to go, no matter how strong my potential is. I have to survive first. Those gods who have lived for millions of years are not to be trifled with. If I'm not careful, I'll be turned into a toy. Once the identity of the time dragon was exposed, many gods would definitely be eager to capture Garen. He did not want his skin and tendons to be skinned and turned into a time-type divine artifact, or his soul to be extracted and snatched from his body, or his soul to be enslaved and turned into a puppet that could not resist. Therefore, it was best to develop silently. Garen's dragon eyes flickered, and he quickly formulated a growth plan for himself. The plan was very simple. He would survive in the northern ice fields until he was 100 years old. When he became an adult, he would probably have the power of a normal time dragon. He might even be stronger because of his special body. The path has to be taken step by step. Set a small goal first and live to adulthood. Dragons became adults at the age of 100. It sounded like a long time, but as long as there was enough food and a safe environment, they could eat and sleep. 100 years would pass quickly. Due to the harsh and cold geographical environment, the northern ice fields also had another name, cold desolate desert. As the name implied, it meant that there were few people in the cold desert. There were fewer species of creatures, and only a portion of creatures with cold resistance barely survived. However, to Garen, as long as he stabilized himself, it was a good place to grow. The only flaw was probably that the food resources were not abundant. The ground of the nest shook slightly, and the huge and long dragon wings were folded on both sides of her body like a folding board. She looked at Garen in confusion as he suddenly raised his hand to punch himself. Then, she swung her tail and threw something down. A bang attracted Garen's attention. It was a huge, 6-meter-long, 3-meter-wide, irregular ice crystal. Garen was slightly stunned as he looked over. Inside the ice crystal was a bear-like creature with snow-white fur, a huge body, and a height of 4 meters. There was no trace of blood on its fur. Clearly, it had not experienced a tragic battle and had been frozen to death. The northern violent bear, in the northern ice fields, was considered a predator at the top of the food chain. They were huge and fought extremely fiercely. Moreover, they had some spell-like abilities. Spell-like ability referred to an ability that had an effect similar to a spell, but it was not a true spell. When using it, there was no need for long incantations, cumbersome actions, or some materials and equipment. It could be used with the user's mind and instincts. The concept was like the commonly known innate ability. However, in front of the soon-to-be-adult white dragon mother, the northern violent bear was only prey. In the end, a true dragon was a top-notch creature in the various worlds and had a very strong dominance. So she went to prepare food for us. White dragon mother doesn't seem to be so unreliable, Garen thought. She took care of them, but not completely. This was probably how the white dragon mother treated the baby dragons. Soon, the white dragon mother moved her feet and lay down on the towering ice bed made of ice crystals. She closed her eyes and entered a resting state. Seeing that the white dragon mother did not notice the theft of the treasure, Garen heaved a sigh of relief. Because he had absorbed the energy of that gem, Garen felt full all over now. He was not hungry. Patting his stomach, Garen turned around and gnawed at the frozen violent bear. He was not hungry, but it did not affect him from continuing to eat. The ice crystal was not as hard as he had imagined in the white dragon's mouth. It shattered in his mouth like a snowflake. Mixed with fine ice crystals, Garen bit off a large piece of bear paw meat. Warm blood, tough bear meat, chewy fascia, and mixed with the crisp ice crystal fragments actually gave Garen a very delicious feeling. He had originally thought that there would be an unbearable smell of blood, but now it seemed that the unique taste of dragons allowed him to completely accept consuming fresh blood. Soon, Garen buried his head and ate. Dragons were all big eaters, and their appetite seemed to never be satisfied. It was not until he finished eating the 2 arms that were filled with flesh and essence, and ate more meat than his body size, that Garen felt his stomach become bloated. At this moment, a weak dragon roar sounded not far away. Hill shook his head and slowly stood up. She was confused and felt as if she had lost a piece of memory, and her head hurt slightly. However, after seeing the food, Hill quickly forgot about it and rushed over with shining eyes. Garen found it funny and was about to tease Dragon's sister again when a wave of sleepiness from every cell in his body suddenly assaulted him, causing him to involuntarily close his eyes and be attracted by the cold aura of the ice crystal bed. Immediately after, Garen crawled onto the ice bed of the White Dragon Mother in a daze and fell asleep with her. The White Dragon Mother sensed Garen's approach and opened her eyes. She raised her dragon wings and was about to sweep him off the bed. However, after hesitating for a few seconds, White Dragon Mother put down her dragon wings, closed her eyes, and fell asleep. Perhaps this was the extent of her kindness. A week later, the snowstorm that had lasted for nearly half a month finally calmed down. The sky above the northern ice fields turned into a spotless clear color. The blue sky was like a mirror, clear and beautiful. However, the entire place was still covered in silver and snow, filled with a lonely and cold aura. Apart from the howling cold wind, there seemed to be no other sound. The orange sun hanging high above shone with barely warm light, causing this white world to seem to be covered in a layer of faint golden luster. Golden sunlight could be seen everywhere. The growth speed of the baby dragon was very fast, and its physique almost changed every day. A week after it was born, the muscles and bones of the baby dragon were already strong. Its claws and fangs had initial power, and it could leave the nest and try to hunt. Garen, the dragon's sister Hill, and the other 2 dragon brothers who were born later were standing in a row at the edge of the dragon nest cave and looking down. The White Dragon Mother had produced a total of 6 dragon eggs. 2 of them were not true dragons, but dragon beasts that had not received the dragon's inheritance. They were cruelly thrown out of the territory by the White Dragon Mother in front of the few baby dragons. They had probably died in the vast ice plain. Faint golden sunlight shone diagonally at the edge of the dragon nest and refracted through the ice crystals before landing on the baby dragons. The dragon's sister, Hill, had developed a little in the past week and was even stronger. At this moment, because of the sunlight, her body had an additional golden color that intertwined with the mirror-like smooth and bright scales on her body. She looked quite beautiful. As for the 2 dragon brothers, forget it. Garen stretched his wide dragon wings. With a gentle move of his enlarged body, he squeezed his siblings to the other side. Due to the fact that he had absorbed the energy of the magic gem, he had not opened his eyes in the past week. He was almost always in a sleeping state. He grew taller and looked like he was no longer on the same level as Hill and the others. A few hours ago, Garen woke up. When he discovered that he was actually sleeping beside the White Dragon Mother, he was shocked. However, when he saw that she did not move, he was relieved. On the other hand, the White Dragon Mother was still sleeping. She was still the same motionless pig who could not be moved no matter how the few little dragon cubs pushed and called. Garen felt that she could definitely sense the call of the baby dragons, but she was only unwilling to pay attention to it and continued sleeping. One could never wake a dragon who was pretending to be asleep. The violent bear meat that the white dragon mother had brought back last time had already been eaten by the baby dragons with huge appetites. Including Garen, they felt their stomachs rumble in hunger. They were now gathered at the entrance of the dragon's nest, which was 500 meters away from the steep ice cliff. They planned to leave the dragon's nest and hunt nearby. The white dragon mother could not be blamed for being irresponsible. This was because adult dragons usually would not give baby dragons abundant food. They would only give a portion that could maintain their daily activities and let the impatient baby dragons hunt small creatures themselves. This was to train their ability, claws, and body strength. Almost every adult dragon had experienced this. As a creature at the top of the food chain, a baby dragon born a week later had the strength to kill ordinary lions and tigers with its hard dragon scales and sharp claws. He could not help but feel a little nervous. Compared to his siblings, who mainly relied on their instincts, because his intelligence was much higher, he was more suspicious and hesitant. He did not dare to take off directly. This was because Garen's previous self was originally a little afraid of heights. When he was high in the sky, he would often imagine jumping down and dying. Although he did not feel that way now, he was still a little hesitant. 500 meters high. If I can't fly well and fall. Garen gasped as if he had seen a large pile of meat paste. However, as a dragon, flying in the sky was destined. Running away could not resolve any problems. Garen took a few deep breaths of the cold air and suppressed the throbbing in his heart. Then, he looked at his dragon wings that were about the same length as his body. With a thought, the folded dragon wings waved like an arm, stretched out, and quickly flapped. As the dragon wings moved, the magical energy in the surrounding space moved like an elf. It surrounded Garen's body and produced a buoyancy. His thick lower limbs immediately left the ground and were more than 3 feet tall. His entire body floated up. The flight of a dragon actually relied on its passive spell ability. It was equivalent to having a permanent flying technique, and it was a very high-level one. Although the dragon wings were wide and powerful, according to the structure, they were clearly unable to support the body weight of a dragon. On the other hand, while Garen was still trying to fly, the dragon sister and the dragon brothers had already flapped their wings excitedly and jumped away from the dragon nest, flying wantonly under the blue and clear sky. On their first flight, they displayed complete flexibility, as if they were born with the ability to fly. Garen, why aren't you here yet? Hill skillfully spun in the air, then turned to look at Garen, who was several times larger than him, and spoke to him in dragon language. The sound was crisp and pleasant, like silver bells dancing in the wind. The two dragon brothers also looked at Garen at the same time and said in dragon language, Garen, are you afraid? Garen glanced at Dragon Brother No. 1 and Dragon Brother No. 2, whose names he did not memorize out of laziness, and snorted lightly. Is this the tone of speaking to an older brother? He looked up at the endless snow-white world and looked at the faint golden horizon far away. Suddenly, his dragon wings shook, and the entire dragon left the dragon's nest with a strong wind. The biting cold wind and scattered snowflakes pounced on Garen. Looking down, he was more than 500 meters above the snow-covered ground. The distinct snow was like sand, covering all the ground in his vision. The imagined fear and discomfort did not come. Garen was slightly stunned. Then, he felt that his mind was wide open and his vision was vast. A heroic feeling of being able to fly freely arose. He immediately wanted to soar and dance in the boundless ice world, enjoying the cold pleasure of the wind and snow passing through his body. However, there was one more thing to do before that. Let me teach you a lesson first. You need to learn how to treat other dragons with respect. Garen narrowed his eyes and looked at the two dragon brothers more than 10 meters away. Perhaps it was because of the white dragon's evil nature that Garen's personality had become not so friendly, just like how his two dragon brothers could not help but provoke him. After being provoked, he also wanted to return the favor and teach them a lesson. Garen felt the subtle change in his personality compared to when he was a human, but he did not resist. Instead, he felt that it was more interesting. He chose to take the initiative to accept this change and felt that it was necessary to let the Dragon Brothers recognize who was the boss here. Dragon Brother No. 1 and Dragon Brother No. 2 looked at each other and saw the meaning in each other's eyes. A second later, they flapped their wings at the same time and flew towards Garen from both sides. Dragons were creatures that respected strength, especially evil dragons. Their kinship was extremely thin. Even baby dragons would rely on fighting to confirm their status. Although Garen was the eldest brother and was even larger than them, if his true strength was not enough to suppress them, he would not be taken seriously by such proud creatures. Body size was not enough to determine everything. Dragon Brother No. 1 was slightly faster. His adult wolf-like body quickly crossed a distance of 10 meters, and his dragon claws grabbed at Garen's face without holding back. Garen lowered his head, and his body that was already the size of a northeastern tiger collided with it like a heavy tank. Under his terrifying might, Dragon Brother No. 1 clearly panicked. Bang! Dragon Brother No. 1 was sent flying. He was locked around the neck by Garen's dragon claws like a doll. Then, he was pressed to the white snow ground by Garen, forming a dragon pit mark. Then, he was beaten up. Dragon Brother No. 1 was unwilling to accept this. He straightened his neck and glared at Garen. Roar. As soon as he spoke, Garen's dragon claw clenched his entire face and pressed it into the snow to rub it back and forth. Helpless cries sounded continuously. Although size did not represent everything, it was enough for him to beat up the baby dragon. Cough. Although it was not something to be proud of, the violence in Garen's body was stimulated and he enjoyed it. Dragon Brother No. 2, who had originally charged at Garen with Dragon Brother No. 1, immediately tucked his tail between his legs and cowered when he saw Garen instantly deal with him like he was beating a child. He flew dozens of meters in the air to watch the one-sided beating and did not dare to interfere. The exquisite and good-looking dragon sister, Hill, leaned over to Dragon Brother No. 2 and said in a similar bewitching dragon language, "Why don't you help Charles? Otherwise, after Garen beats him up, you'll be beaten up." Charles was the name of Dragon Brother No. 1. Now, go help Charles and join forces to deal with Garen. You still have a chance. The intelligence of the dragon sister seemed to be slightly higher than ordinary white dragon young dragons, unlike the 2 silly dragon brothers. Seeing that Garen still dared to take the initiative to provoke them with his size, Dragon Brother No. 2 hesitated for a moment before his expression turned ruthless. He swooped down and pounced at Garen. Crack! Garen swept his dragon wings and slapped Dragon Brother No. 2 into the snow without looking back. Then he scratched each of them and pressed down on their silly heads, letting them rub against the cold ground under the snow intimately. 100 meters in the air, Hill watched this scene and could not help but let out a happy dragon roar. Poor Tom was tricked by the great Hill and got beaten up like this. The name of Dragon Brother No. 2 was Tom. A few minutes later, Charles and Tom were taught a lesson by Garen. Their faces were bruised and swollen, and they rolled over in fear, indicating that they had admitted defeat. This also meant that they were willing to listen to Garen in the future and treat him as a true big brother. Garen let go of the silly dragon brothers and looked up at Hill. He said indifferently, "Great Hill, I heard everything you said just now." Hill's proud expression froze slightly. Then she looked at Garen warily and said, "Garen, what do you want?" Garen pinched his dragon claws and said gently, "Now, come down and let me punch you twice. I won't pursue the matter, where you can start running away and be caught by me like the 2 of them. I'll beat you up then." Clearly, he was thinking about what choice to make. At the same time, Garen, who was on the ice and snow, had already let go of the 2 pitiful dragon brothers. He said to Hill, "I'm going to count to 3. If you still don't decide, I'll fly up and beat you up." In the next second, while Hill was still hesitating, Garen's dragon mouth grinned. 3. Boom! As the dragon wings shook, Garen took a deep breath and soared into the sky at an extremely fast speed. Before Hill could react, he had already flown in front of her. He raised his huge head forcefully and smashed it down on Hill's small and exquisite head. Ordinary baby dragons definitely did not have Garen's flying speed. In fact, even he had only just discovered it. When he was highly focused, the flow of time around him seemed to have changed slightly. The speed of his actions seemed to have increased, and it was extremely fast and agile, as if he was in a state of acceleration. Ding! The visor that was like a mirror collided. Hill held her head and was sent flying a few meters. She cried out in pain and shouted, "You said you'd move after counting to 3. You're cheating." Garen chased after her and beat up the dragon sister. He said, "Yes, I only move when I reach 3. What's wrong?" A few minutes later, the dragon sister was also pressed to the snow by Garen. She rolled over and begged for mercy, tacitly agreeing to his status as the boss. "These baby dragons won't listen if I don't beat them up." Garen stretched his muscles. Hill, Charles, and Tom, the 3 bruised and swollen dragons, looked at each other and saw the gloating in each other's eyes. However, when they saw the reflection of their appearance on Garen's armor, they could not help but glare at him. Bang! 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 After 3 punches, Garen shook his dragon claws that were clenched into fists and said, "If you keep staring, I'll twist your head." The 3 little dragons shrunk their necks and did not dare to look at Garen. The proud and arrogant baby dragons were almost fearless. Only violent methods could subdue them. Garen hummed a small tune and suddenly felt that his dragon life seemed to be very good. The evil dragon's casual personality of honoring strength deeply satisfied him. A total of 4 baby dragons spread their wings and soared in the area a kilometer away from the dragon nest. They gradually scattered and searched for prey in their vision. In the territory of the white dragon mother with the ice cliff dragon nest as the center, powerful magical creatures or large beasts like dinosaurs or ferocious beasts were expelled and killed by the white dragon mother or taken in as servants. The closer they were to the dragon's nest, the safer it was. If not for being too unlucky, baby dragons were usually not killed near the dragon mother's dragon nest. Soon, Garen's eyes lit up and he saw a fox-wolf. Fox-wolves were not magical creatures, but beasts at the bottom of the food chain. Young dragons could easily crush them. He flapped his wings and dived, extending his dragon claws to grab the fox-wolf. When Garen was highly focused, the feeling of the surrounding time flowing faster came again, and the speed increased suddenly. The fox-wolf had just felt the aura of a predator. Before it could enter the snow, it was grabbed by Garen's dragon claw, and its neck was broken. This fox-wolf was similar to a normal wolf in size and was about 1.5 meters long. After Garen ate it, the hunger in his stomach decreased greatly. However, he still felt hungry. Because it was the high-speed stage of growing, the baby dragon's digestive ability was very strong, and it was also hungry very quickly. However, he was not in a hurry to continue looking for prey. Instead, he pondered over his ability. After a week of sleep, other than allowing Garen to grow larger, it also gave him an ability similar to time acceleration. This ability seemed to be passive. Garen did not understand the exact principle. He only confirmed that after his mind was highly focused, he would obtain an approximate 50% acceleration. It was not just to increase his movement speed. It was because the speed of time flow had increased on Garen's body, causing his overall speed to increase by 50%, including his attack speed, dodge speed, reaction speed, and so on. As for the time dragon reversal that he had unintentionally used last time, Garen wanted to take the initiative to use it to borrow time from the future. However, after trying a few times, there was no result. According to his few attempts, he suspected that it was not that he could not use it, but that his future self was too stingy and was unwilling to lend it. Forget about the time dragon reversal. Let's study this time acceleration ability thoroughly. With this in mind, Garen moved. As he searched for prey, he tested his newly obtained ability. Just like that, half a day passed. Logically speaking, it was night, but the sky did not change at all. This was caused by the unique geographical environment of the northern ice fields. Here, the cycle of day and night was different. They alternated in intervals of 6 months, which was half a year. Half a year was extremely bright, and the sky was always sunny. For For the other half a year, the sky was forever dark. It was currently bright. Garen looked a little tired. He landed on the ice field covered in snow and pressed out a faint dragon-shaped depression. At the same time, his eyes were filled with thought. The limit of the acceleration effect is double the original speed, and I can even take the initiative to control it. I've used it many times in a short period of time. I don't feel anything in my body, but I'm mentally exhausted. I feel the exhaustion of staying up all night as a human. My head will become dizzy. I can only accelerate myself and not slow people down. After roughly figuring out the effect of this ability, Garen thought for a moment and planned to name it. However, before he could think, a name appeared in Garen's mind through the inheritance memory. Time manipulation. Garen was speechless. It's called time manipulation, but why can it only accelerate myself? He originally wanted to name it time acceleration, but since this ability already had a fixed name, he did not plan to change it. Time manipulation could only be used to accelerate, and the limit was only double. It was probably because he had just grasped it. In the future, he might be able to achieve an effect that matched this name. The current Garen was no longer hungry. With the acceleration ability of time manipulation, he had hunted a lot of food. Although most of the creatures living in this cold area were alert and vigilant, and even ordinary beasts could discover Garen's aura, they could not escape from his pursuit. Without staying for long, Garen flew towards the dragon's nest not far away. Before he arrived at the dragon nest, he saw 2 dragon brothers and a dragon sister. They were all dejected as if they had been dealt a blow. After seeing Garen, Hill took the initiative to ask, "Garen, how many have you caught?" Garen frowned slightly and said, "Do you want to be beaten up? Call me Brother Garen." Hill was a little indignant, but she still called out to Garen weakly. Only then did Garen answer in satisfaction. "Not many, just more than 10. There are only wild beasts like fox wolves, white-haired tigers, and cold leopards. About 10. Charles's eyes widened. "You must be joking." Tom was in disbelief. When Garen heard this, he knew why these little dragons were a little dejected. They probably did not catch much prey, so they felt angry and hungry. However, Garen felt that hunting was quite simple. Although these baby dragons had just been born, they had the strength to tear apart tigers and leopards alive. Why could they not catch these prey? Garen was a little puzzled. Coincidentally, a white python stuck its head out of the snow and was seen by Hill. Hill's eyes lit up. She immediately flapped her wings and accelerated, wanting to grab the white python from the air. However, before she could approach, almost the moment Hill moved, the white python darted into the snow like a frightened rabbit and disappeared. He carefully looked at the baby dragons and could sense an obvious aura from them. It was the aura of a top predator in this world, the dragon's might. In the dragon's inheritance, it was more accurate to say that it was ferocious. Adult dragons relied on their dragon's might. With a thought, they could make many creatures in the territory unable to move, and their minds were frightened. When fighting people of the same level, dragons might could also play a certain role in suppressing the other party's mind. It was a very powerful supernatural ability. As for supernatural abilities, they referred to abilities that were not affected by magic resistance and were very difficult to counter and dispel. The dragon breath of the dragon race, including the time manipulation ability that Garen had just obtained, were all considered supernatural abilities. Young dragons also have dragon's might, but they can't control it freely. They aren't so strong that their prey can't move. Instead, they disturb their prey. After returning to the dragon's nest, the white dragon mother was still sleeping on the huge ice crystal bed, as if she would never wake up. Garen found a place to lie down. As he closed his eyes to rest, he slowly felt his aura. He was able to capture his prey because of the acceleration of his time manipulation. He forcefully used the huge difference in speed to capture the other party. Like the 3 small dragons, the dragon's might also subconsciously emitted. This was not good. Especially when they were weak, the uncontrollable dragon's might would instead become a signal, allowing the enemy to follow the dragon's might to find the location of the baby dragon. The first lesson of a baby dragon was to learn to control its ferocious ability and dragon's might. It was not only Garen. Hill, Charles, and Tom were like him. They were all working to control the dragon's might and not let it leak casually. The difference was that after Garen realized that he needed to control the dragon's might, he only spent more than half an hour to gain control of it freely. This talent was one of the benefits of the time dragon's physique. In the introduction of the time dragon and the dragon's inheritance, there was a sentence: any knowledge, skill, or language belongs to the time dragon. What it meant was that any skill that could be learned and controlled through cultivation was easy for the time dragon to master. For example, when he borrowed the white dragon mother's magic gem, he easily learned the subtle control of magic power. Because it took a lot of mental strength to try and control time, after figuring out the release of the dragon's might, Garen closed his eyes and slept. This sleep was only for the sake of quickly recovering his mental state, not a dragon slumber that could promote the evolution of his body and obtain new abilities. A dragon slumber required enough time and energy reserves. It was not a process that could be undergone casually. Not long after, Garen was woken up. He turned around and saw the beautiful and huge white dragon mother stretching her dragon wings. Her light yellow dragon eyes were filled with satisfaction because she had slept comfortably enough. However, this satisfaction immediately disappeared after seeing a few baby dragons. It seemed that the white dragon mother did not like baby dragons, Garen thought. Immediately, the white dragon mother left the dragon's nest. After returning, she captured another magical creature that had already been killed and frozen. It was a winter wolf. This snow-white wolf was almost a magical creature below the dragon race. When the baby dragon's eyes lit up and they pounced at the food, they were stopped by the white dragon mother. She drew her sharp dragon claws across the wolf's body and divided it into 4 parts. The largest piece was pushed in front of Garen, and the smaller 3 were given to Hill, Charles, and Tom. Garen blinked and began to eat without holding back. A magical creature like the winter wolf was not something that baby dragons could come into contact with at this moment. Only the white dragon mother could provide it. It was a good food that could greatly promote the growth of baby dragons. The meat contained rich energy. If not for the fact that the white dragon mother had clearly divided the share, he would have wanted to snatch some more from his brothers and sister. As for the reason why the white dragon mother gave him the most, Garen knew it very well. He grew the fastest and was the most powerful among this batch of baby dragons. To the evil dragons who respected strength, even the food supply to the baby dragons followed this principle. The weak could only be ruthlessly eliminated. The 3 little dragons revealed unwilling expressions and stared at Garen's food with obvious greed in their eyes. However, with the white dragon mother around, and having already suffered a huge loss in Garen's hands, they did not dare to snatch it at all. After delivering food to the baby dragons, the white dragon mother fell asleep again. He did not know what was so great about sleeping that she could not bear to wake up. After Garen finished eating, he rested for a moment. When he was full of energy and stamina, he flew out of the dragon nest and hunted alone. In order to grow quickly, he needed a large amount of food, the more the better. If the white dragon mother did not give him enough, he could only capture it himself. Fortunately, there were no powerful magical creatures near the ice cliff dragon nest, causing him to have fewer worries. Moreover, to be chosen by the white dragon mother as her territory, the hunting resources here were indeed relatively rich. When the 3 little dragons saw Garen leave the dragon nest to hunt, they quickly made the same choice. Garen relied on his physique that was stronger than ordinary baby dragons and the acceleration of time manipulation. Every hunt was filled with rewards. Only when his mind and stamina were a little exhausted did he choose to return to the dragon nest to rest. After recovering, he would begin a new round of hunting. Under the extreme daylight, time slowly passed. While hunting, Garen was still trying to figure out the other abilities of the time dragon. However, perhaps because he was not old enough, he did not obtain anything useful. Regardless, some combat techniques slowly developed as the number of hunts increased. As for the 3 little dragons, most of the time, they returned in a sorry state. However, as dragons, even the weakest white dragon among the 5-colored dragons was not an ordinary magical creature. After a few weeks, The three little dragons gradually learned to retract their dragon's might and became proficient in fighting underwater or under the ice. They no longer starved like before. The white dragon mother held an irresponsible attitude and only hunted a magical creature for the baby dragons every week. Every time this happened, the baby dragons would be the happiest. The flesh and blood of magical creatures were the best food for baby dragons. Be it energy or various nutrients, it was countless times richer than ordinary beasts. Without exception, Garen was favored and obtained the most share every time, causing the three little dragons to be envious, jealous, and helpless. Life became very repetitive next. It was not interesting, but it was safe and stable. Hunting, exploring abilities, waiting for the dragon mother to feed him, beating up the dragon brothers and dragon sisters since they could not help but provoke him once in a while, and sleeping. Time passed quickly. Such simple and fulfilling days went by. The sun rose, the moon set, and the stars shifted around in the sky. After experiencing the extreme night and day, when the entire northern ice fields was enveloped by the night, a 6-meter-long white beast with an 8-meter wingspan jumped out of the ice cliff dragon nest and soared in the whistling cold wind. His dragon claws were thick, his dragon wings were like sails, and his dragon tail was like a spear. His entire body emitted a powerful aura. The most eye-catching thing was his pair of platinum dragon eyes, as well as the closely connected and embedded ring of black scales on his neck. The baby dragons of the dragon race were between the ages of 0 and 6. However, Garen, who was only about a year and a half old and was still in the baby dragon stage, already had the body of an adolescent dragon, equivalent to the body of a dragon who had lived for more than 25 years. This growth speed stunned Garen. It was as if time was circulating much faster on his body. However, after understanding his own strength, Garen gradually accepted this monstrous growth speed. As he grew up after sleeping many times, in Garen's vision, this world was not just the sky, the ground, the snow, the living beings. He also saw an illusory river that other creatures could not see. This was the river of time. To be precise, it was a physical form of time, but it appeared to be a river in Garen's eyes. Perhaps in the understanding of other creatures, it was a huge tree that reached the sky or a breeze. The entire main material plane, no, all the planes, even the phlogiston layer between the plane's crystal walls, was in the river of time. The river of time enveloped everything. The falling snow, the flowing ice river, the cold wind. When Garen breathed, other than inhaling air and elemental energy, he would also swallow strands of the illusory river water of the river of time and obtain a unique power that Garen called the power of time. The power of time he obtained was also the source of energy he used for time manipulation. As for why he first grasped the time acceleration instead of deceleration or reversal, it was because the river of time would always flow forward. It was always much more difficult to go against the flow than move with the current. As a baby time dragon, he was like a strange creature loved by the river of time. With the help of the river, his growth speed was more than 10 times that of ordinary dragons. Moreover, other than making him stronger, the river of time did not leave any bad effects on him. 4 white dragons, the scales that were as bright as mirrors when they were born, would gradually become rough and show signs of aging. However, Garen's scales were still as beautiful and resplendent as a mirror, as if they had never experienced the baptism of time. Only natural disasters and man-made disasters could kill the time dragon. The flow of time was harmless to them. At night, Garen, who had grown a lot, was a little worried. The white dragon mother has been looking at me more and more strangely recently. She probably doesn't want to raise me anymore. Without the white dragon mother, my stable and safe life will never return. Logically speaking, the dragon mother would at least raise the baby dragon until it passed the current stage and became a child dragon with a certain ability to protect itself. Only then would she chase it out of the nest and leave it to die. No matter how cold and cruel an evil dragon was, it would not let the baby dragon fend for itself. However, Garen, a baby dragon who was only a year old, already had the body size of an adolescent white dragon. The way the white dragon mother looked at Garen was filled with vigilance and impatience. It would probably not be long before she expelled him from the dragon nest. Although the current Garen already had a certain ability to protect himself and had also grasped a new ability other than time manipulation, he was still inferior to an actual adult dragon. In this dangerous world, he could only be careful after leaving the white dragon mother and tread on thin ice. Garen was already making plans for himself. From time to time, he would take the risk to fly to the edge of the white dragon mother's territory and look into the distance from a high place, looking for a suitable place to develop so that he could find a safe place as soon as possible after being expelled. A wandering life was not what Garen wanted. That was too dangerous. Under the night sky, Garen flapped his wings. The mirror-like dragon scales on his body did not attract attention because of the reflection. Instead, they reflected the night sky environment and turned into a very good camouflage. If someone with poor eyesight saw Garen fly through the night sky, they would most likely treat him as a black cloud. At this moment, in the northern ice fields, the night sky was dotted with spots. Stars and moons appeared at the same time. The scenery was beautiful, like a scene that could only be seen in a dream. Garen flew under such a night sky and felt that the surrounding air seemed to be much more lively. Although this was not the first time he had flown, the freedom of flying in the sky made Garen feel happy no matter what. A moment later, Garen flew to the edge of the white dragon mother's territory. Apart from a huge ice cliff that was 1,000 meters tall, the place where the white dragon mother was generally a relatively empty plain environment. Thousands of kilometers south was a continuous mountain range formed by countless mountains and hills. Countless magical creatures, humanoid creatures, and crypt monsters lived in it. The direction in which Garen flew was towards the vaguely visible huge continuous mountain range. If possible, he actually did not want to approach the continuous mountain range because it was more dangerous than the northern ice fields. Garen had once crossed the 1,000-meter-tall ice cliff and continued to move deeper into the northern ice fields. However, the further north he went, the colder and more barren the environment was. The creatures living there were pitifully few. In such an environment, Garen was not confident that he could find enough food. He had a huge appetite and had to eat food that was several times his weight every week to barely satisfy his needs. If he went deeper into the remote northern ice fields, perhaps he would starve to death before he was killed by the foreign enemies. If word got out that a time dragon had starved to death, it would make all intelligent creatures laugh their heads off. Although he was flying towards the southern mountains, he was only looking for a suitable place. Before he had enough strength, Garen did not plan to leave the northern ice fields. This was because the most dangerous creatures in this world were actually humans. One of the beautiful names that human adventurers loved very much was called the Dragon Slayer. Once the figure of a dragon was discovered, countless human adventurers would swarm over, wanting to become the hero who slain a dragon. Be it teeth, claws, or scales, the body of a dragon was a top-notch magic material. In the human world, it meant countless wealth. My previous kind is the most guarded against me now. Garen felt that fate was unpredictable, and the previous life's blue planet appeared in his mind. He thought that after he was strong enough, he might be able to return and show his power in public. This was not impossible. The rules of matter in different planes were extremely different. Because the rules of matter between Earth and the main material plane were roughly similar, there was a high chance that it was somewhere in the main material plane. In Garen's current understanding, a plane referred to the collection of countless worlds. These worlds were of different sizes and shapes. They might be a piece of land, a planet, a galaxy, or a vast universe. The relationship between the plane and the world was like a large bubble wrapped in countless small bubbles. The membrane that separated the bubble was called a crystal wall. Between the crystal walls was an amber liquid called phlogiston. Apart from powerful items like teleportation arrays, magic ships, and some special spells, some powerful creatures had the ability to directly travel through worlds and planes. The Time Dragon was one of them. Garen had a feeling that after he became stronger, he could definitely travel through the River of Time and even head to the past and future. Back to the topic, he was still a baby dragon who was worried about being expelled. Garen circled in the sky and looked at the ground, searching for a suitable place to hide. A moment later, his eyes lit up and he locked onto an area. About 15 kilometers away from his current location, there was a small, winding ice river. Any dragon was a sea, land, and air creature. Garen felt that he might be able to live underwater for a period of time in the future. Be it concealment or safety, building a nest at the bottom of the ice river should be one of the best. Thinking of this, Garen decided to go near the small ice river to investigate and see if there were any creatures that he could not provoke, such as the frost giant, the winter wolf, and other ruthless figures. He turned to look at the location of the dragon nest and took a deep breath before leaving the territory of the white dragon mother. After leaving an invisible boundary, the pressure that was constantly emitted by a powerful dragon disappeared. With his speed, it would not take long for him to reach it at full speed. However, because he had left the safe territory of the white dragon mother, Garen maintained enough caution. He restrained his dragon's might and controlled his flying speed to prevent the whistling wind and sound from attracting the attention of powerful existences. However, after Garen flew for about 5 kilometers and was still 10 kilometers away from the small ice river, trouble still took the initiative to find him. A huge eagle with a wingspan that was even larger than Garen's swept past above him. After discovering him, its rapidly moving body paused for a moment before it flew towards him without any hesitation. Garen heard the commotion and looked up. This white feathered guy with wings wrapped in wind appeared in his vision. Magical creature, white feather ice wind eagle. Garen's heart skipped a beat, but he was not too nervous. This was not the first time he had encountered magical creatures. In the territory of the white dragon mother, there were only no very powerful magical creatures. There were still many ordinary magical creatures. In the past year, Garen had killed some, but most of them were super small magical creatures like ice shard snakes and wind-breathing birds. The white feather ice wind eagle in front of him was large in size. At first glance, it was even larger than Garen. Swish! With a miserable sound, the white feather ice wind eagle flew towards Garen like a fighter jet. At the same time, its wings shook and a cold wind immediately grew. Mixed with a large number of small ice needles, they fell towards Garen like a storm. A mere flying beast. Although I don't want to cause trouble, it doesn't mean that I'm easy to provoke. I can use you to test my new ability. Garen did not want to make a commotion because he was afraid of attracting the attention of creatures like the white dragon mother, not the white feather ice wind eagle in front of him. He snorted softly, opened his dragon mouth, and spat at the white feather ice wind eagle. The frost breath that did not belong to the white dragon stunned the white feather ice wind eagle slightly. In its vision, Garen seemed to only be spitting, but he did not spit out any dragon breath. Was this little white dragon stupid? The white feather ice wind eagle thought in confusion. Immediately, an invisible and intangible linear wave swept past the white feather ice wind eagle. It let out a sharp cry of fear, and its body quickly lost its strength. Its eyes became muddy, and its originally bright feathers became dim. The circulation of its magic became extremely obscure and slow. At the same time, its body suffered irresistible energy damage. Its feathers were torn, and its flesh and blood flew everywhere. This was the new ability that Garen had recently obtained belonging to the Time Dragon, a dragon breath called Time Plundering Breath. The invisible dragon breath that spewed in a straight line was difficult to see with the naked eye. Because it was a supernatural ability, ordinary detection magic could not sense it. After regaining its senses, the white feather ice wind eagle hurriedly dodged and left the attack range of the Time Plundering Breath. Garen shut his mouth. Due to the huge consumption of the Time Plundering Breath, he did not continue to pursue the other party with his dragon breath. He only activated the accelerated state of time manipulation. The speed of time around him doubled, and his body immediately became extremely strong and agile, completely different from his body size. The cold wind and ice needles brushed past Garen's body, but he agilely dodged them. Immediately, the white feather ice wind eagle, who had been heavily injured by the time plundering breath, felt its vision blur and saw Garen's figure approaching. This is the price for launching a sneak attack. Garen slapped his two dragon claws over in an ear-piercing posture. The speed of his dragon claws was extremely fast, and they heavily slapped the head of the white feather ice wind eagle. Crack! Garen clearly felt that some flesh and bones were slapped into meat paste by his dragon claw. Next, he grabbed the headless corpse of the white feather ice wind eagle and flew to the ground to eat. The meat of magical creatures had always been very nutritious. As he ate, Garen recalled the battle process. The dragon breath that belonged to the time dragon had two effects. One was to let the other party age at a speed of 2 years per second. The speed of aging depended on Garen's age. Every year that Garen aged, the speed of aging would increase by 1 year per second. The second was to produce a supernatural injury relative to Garen's age. It was very difficult to resist with ordinary spell shields or his own spell resistance. The expenditure was mainly the time that Garen usually consumed, coupled with the complicated proportion of all-element energy. Supernatural abilities, spell-like abilities, and spells were all difficult to use in an anti-magic area. Without the foundation of elemental energy, it was very difficult to use. Most importantly, the other party can't see anything. After being struck, the white feather ice wind eagle dodged in fear, but it was already too late. When I live to 1,000 years with a dragon breath, the other party will age 1,000 years in a second. Wouldn't it directly die of old age? Garen was very satisfied with the effect of the time plundering breath and happily finished the flesh and blood of the white feather ice wind eagle. Next, he reorganized his things and flew towards the small ice river again. He did not encounter any accidents along the way. Following the direction of the small ice river, Garen moved back and forth and gradually confirmed that this was an ice river about 20 kilometers in length. Moreover, there was no trace of the white dragon's old enemy, the frost giant, nor were there powerful magical creatures like the winter wolf, the green-footed dragon snake, and the northern violent bear. There were only some biological groups like the terror lizard, white hound, and tidal crab living near this ice river. Although they knew some spell-like abilities, they could not pose a threat to Garen. In the future, I'll usually live under the ice river and use them as my servants. I don't have to hunt personally anymore. Let my servants contribute food to me. There are probably creatures in the ice river. Garen looked at the winding river and made plans in his mind. However, no matter what, it was the safest in the White Dragon Mother's territory. Building a nest and surviving was only the last resort. A moment later, he flapped his dragon wings and returned to the dragon's nest. "Sigh, White Dragon Mother, I'm a 1-year-old baby dragon. I hope you don't treat me so cruelly," the 6-meter-long Garen thought. Some time later, he returned to the dragon's lair. White Dragon Mother was not here. Garen heaved a sigh of relief. The dragon brothers and sister were all here. Compared to Garen, the difference in their sizes was getting greater and greater. They were completely different from dragons of the same age. Their bodies were only the size of cows and horses now, so they did not dare to act rashly in front of Garen and had been beaten up many times. "Come here, massage my back." Garen lay on the ground and narrowed his eyes. At the same time, he spoke to his 2 dragon brothers and 1 dragon sister. After going back and forth, he was a little exhausted physically and mentally. The dragon brothers and sister were expressionless, but they walked to Garen's side with familiarity and used their dragon claws to massage his back. Their actions were natural and fluid, and they were extremely skilled. It was obvious that they had been forced by Garen to do this many times. Garen closed his eyes comfortably and enjoyed the true dragon's massage, while slowly recovering his stamina and energy. Immediately, the White Dragon Mother returned and brought prey. It was a large python more than 10 meters long, with residual magical fluctuations in its body. It was also a magical creature. Garen immediately opened his eyes and leaned forward to wait for the White Dragon Mother to share the food. The White Dragon Mother glanced at Garen, then looked at the three baby dragons who looked aggrieved and were made to look weak by Garen. A strange emotion gradually appeared in the pale, yellow dragon's eyes. The three little dragons were overjoyed. At the same time, they looked at Garen proudly, as if saying that he had fallen out of favor and was going to go hungry. Garen did not mind the gazes of the three little dragons, but his heart skipped a beat. He knew that the white dragon mother was already thinking of expelling him. Fortunately, he had already prepared in advance. Otherwise, if he was suddenly expelled without any preparation, he would live a very dangerous wandering life. As expected, 3 days later, on an ordinary snowy day, when Garen ended the hunt and returned to the dragon's nest, he was blocked by the white dragon mother, who was standing at the edge of the dragon's nest cave, not letting him in. Garen, you already have the ability to survive alone. It's time to leave my territory. The white dragon mother stared at Garen coldly and spoke in dragon language. So the white dragon mother can speak. Garen was slightly stunned. Looking at this beautiful and ferocious beast, a rather complicated feeling arose in his heart. The first sentence he heard from the white dragon mother was a cold and heartless expulsion notice without any warmth or emotion. It seemed that to the white dragon mother, he was already an enemy she had to be wary of. After all, they had been together for more than a year. Garen was not really an evil dragon, and his emotions were not that indifferent. He still had some feelings for the white dragon mother. Unfortunately, she did not think much of it and treated the current Garen as an existence that would threaten her status. Leave my territory. If you appear in this area again in the future, I'll treat you as an enemy. In order to declare her sovereignty and show her strength, the white dragon mother slapped her dragon claw angrily. The huge force shook many cracks in the dragon's nest. Boom! At the same time, clusters of crisscross sharp ice crystals stretched out and surged towards Garen. Garen knew that the white dragon mother would expel him. However, he did not expect her to be so ruthless and manic, directly attacking him. Caught off guard, the cold and hard ice crystal cluster collided with Garen's body, and the powerful impact sent his entire body flying. After flying dozens of meters in the air, Garen barely stabilized his body. An obvious crack appeared on the white scale armor that was struck head-on, and waves of pain sounded. Get lost! The white dragon mother roared again. The wind in the northern ice fields was biting cold and oppressive. It whistled and blew on Garen's body, but it was not 10% as cold as the white dragon mother's attitude. Garen endured the pain and said nothing. His expression sank slightly. Without any hesitation, he flapped his dragon wings and raised his body. He crossed the ice cliff and continued north, flying towards the nesting location he had chosen. During this process, his angry mood gradually cooled down. Turning around to look in the direction of the ice cliff, Garen's gaze was cold and he was silent. If he was directly asked to leave, there was no problem. The ice cliff was the territory of the white dragon mother, so he would not have any complaints about being expelled. However, it was a little unacceptable for Garen to be beaten before being expelled. Garen retracted his gaze and firmly remembered the white dragon mother. Before long, Garen left the territory of the white dragon mother and arrived at the small ice river under the night sky. Looking down at the flowing river, Garen flew down and disturbed a group of terror lizards living nearby. The terror lizard was called a lizard, but it looked like a crocodile. Moreover, it was a large crocodile about 4 meters long and 2 tons in weight when it was an adult. Its body was covered in a thick layer of scales, and its claws were sharp. Its intelligence was not low and was rather cunning. There were a total of 33 terror lizards in this group. The largest terror lizard leader was already 5 meters long. Just from its body length, it was only slightly shorter than Garen. As soon as it saw Garen, the leader of the terror lizards surrounded him with a group of them. It raised its head and stuck out its long and sensitive tongue. It hissed, and its pupils constricted into vertical lines. Garen's eyes were calm, and his platinum golden dragon eyes shone brightly. His dragon wings suddenly spread out, and an 8-meter-long wingspan blocked the moonlight, forming a huge shadow on the snow-white ground. The size displayed completely suppressed the terror lizards. Whoosh! Coupled with his actions, the invisible dragon's might emitted from Garen's body and swept past the group of terror lizards in the blink of an eye. The terror lizards immediately became flustered and anxious. The terror lizard leader barely resisted Garen's dragon's might, but under his silent and calm gaze, it gradually began to retreat. As it retreated, it roared and spat out a bright fireball, but exploded into sparks when Garen's dragon wings swept past. There were no injuries on Garen's dragon wings, as if what he swept away was not an explosive fireball, but a breeze. The magic immunity of a dragon was quite terrifying. If it was a simple white dragon, it could be extremely immune to cold damage. It would be more afraid of fire damage and would not dare to face it head-on. However, as a special time dragon, Garen had a high magic immunity trait that nearly nullified all attributes. From that fireball, Garen only felt a little warm. This attack exhausted the last of the terror lizard leader's courage. It slowly lay on the ground and whimpered softly, not daring to look at Garen anymore. The other terror lizards had already been lying on the ground earlier. Some had even peed in terror, either trembling or staying motionless. After putting away his dragon's might, Garen waved at the terror lizard leader. The crocodile-like lizard leader was stunned. Then, it took heavy steps and carefully approached Garen like an armored car. It lowered its ferocious head. Garen stretched out his dragon claw and touched the head of the terror lizard leader as if he was playing with a pet. It felt rough and grainy. The texture was actually quite comfortable to stroke. The terror lizard leader did not resist at all and happily enjoyed Garen's touch. To a true dragon, subduing servants was a very simple matter. When the dragon's might was displayed, it could basically make the other party give up resisting. Sometimes, even creatures of the same strength could not resist the dragon's might. This was not only an aura, but also a supernatural ability. Some creatures would even take the initiative to find traces of a true dragon and take pride in being its servant. The biggest example was the kobolds. These fellows with extremely thin dragon blood in their bodies were humanoids that blindly worshipped true dragons. After the terror lizard leader submitted, the other terror lizards stood up one after another. They surrounded Garen and lowered their heads to roar as if they were offering their loyalty to him. This group of terror lizards was already considered Garen's servants. They were lackeys, spies, and when necessary, food reserves. Before long, Garen did the same thing and took in more than 40 white hounds not far away. He was in the middle and upper reaches of a small ice river. Garen planned to build a nest in the ice river, so he did not plan to let go of the nearby creatures. He would either kill them or take them in as his servants. A white dragon with an 8-meter wingspan soared in the sky and continuously moved along the ice river. Its platinum dragon eyes looked down at the snow-white world below. A few minutes later, Garen was stunned and looked puzzled. He saw a relatively strange creature gathering in the tribe. After thinking for a moment, Garen flapped his dragon wings, and his body brought about a violent wind as he sped towards the place he saw. Below, translucent silver-white creatures that seemed to be made of ice crystals raised their heads and looked at the approaching dragon in fear. Bang! Garen landed on the ground and carefully sized up this humanoid tribe living near a small ice river. To be precise, it was the elementals. In front of Garen were about 70 ice houses. The construction was rough and simple, but it was filled with a rough sense of beauty. The residents of these ice houses were human-shaped creatures. They were between 1 to 2 meters tall and looked like ice pieces that had become spirits. Their facial features were three-dimensional and distinct as if they had been carved by someone, but they were so strange that they could make subtle expressions. Their appearance was very exquisite and beautiful, with a gender-neutral beauty. Water, elemental life forms? Garen pondered. When he saw these guys, he immediately recognized them as water elemental creatures, but when he got closer, they were completely different. The bodies of water elemental life forms were basically semi-fluid, but these life forms were ice crystals. They're probably mutated water elemental life forms. Because there were no records of such creatures in the dragon inheritance, Garen gave them a name, Northern Ice Spirit. He was happy because elemental creatures were basically intelligent creatures and had the ability to communicate, unlike the terror lizards and the white hounds who were unable to accurately understand Garen's instructions. If he took the Northern Ice Spirits in as his servants, it would be much more convenient for him to give orders. The reason why Garen was surprised was that elemental life forms were very rare in the main material plane. This special life form mainly lived in the inner planes that did not belong to the main material plane, but was very much related to it. The composition of the main material plane was very balanced. All kinds of energy and elements existed, so all kinds of rich biological races were born. However, the inner plane was a place of pure energy elements. A kind of inner plane only had one element or energy leading it, and the environment was simple and dangerous. The 6 great inner planes were respectively earth, water, fire, air, wind, positive energy, and negative energy. The elemental life forms in the main material plane are most likely remnants of summoning magic. Perhaps a mage abandoned his summoned creatures. With the environment conditions of the main material plane, it's almost impossible to naturally give birth to elemental life. While Garen was thinking, the tallest Northern Ice Spirit walked up to him and said in the common language with fear and respect, "Great true dragon, it's our honor to have you here. May I ask what your instructions are?" As expected, it was intelligent. Garen's eyes lit up. He looked at the Northern Ice Spirit in front of him and said in a low voice, "This ice river will be my territory in the future. You will serve me as my servants and offer everything you have. As for me, the true dragon Garen, the future master of the ice fields, will provide you with the protection of a dragon." Garen, who had just lost the protection of the white dragon mother, had to provide protection to other creatures in the blink of an eye. After hearing Garen's words, the Northern Ice Spirit did not show any resistance. Instead, it knelt down in surprise and said, "It's the supreme honor of the Ice River tribe that the great true dragon is willing to take us in as your servants." What it meant was that it was very excited to have a true dragon like Garen as its backer. Garen was very surprised. He originally thought that he had to fight and defeat them before he could subdue this group of Northern Ice Spirits. This was because, in Garen's impression, elemental life forms were basically all spellcasters with good combat strength. Moreover, their personalities were relatively arrogant, and they looked down on creatures with flesh and blood. Although he was a true dragon, it should be relatively difficult to make an elemental creature submit to him with a shake of the dragon's body. Garen thought for a moment and said to the Northern Ice Spirit in front of him, "Tell me your name." "Master, your humble servant is called Roy Ice River." "Then, Roy, show me your ability now." Garen took a step forward and gestured for Roy Ice River to attack him. If he was not wrong, this group of Northern Ice Spirits might be relatively weak compared to ordinary elemental creatures. Otherwise, they would not be so proactive and excited to be taken in as his servants. The strongest expert of the Ice River tribe, Roy Ice River, looked troubled and did not dare to attack Garen. Garen waved his dragon wings impatiently and said, "Don't waste time. I won't pursue your sin of attacking a true dragon." Only then was Roy Ice River relieved. He raised his ice crystal arm and condensed a crystal dagger in his hand before shooting it at Garen. Crack! The frosty dagger landed on Garen's dragon scales. As expected, it shattered into pieces and did not cause any damage to him. Garen looked at Roy Ice River in encouragement and said, "Very good. Continue." However, under Garen's gaze, Roy Ice River lowered his head awkwardly and said, "Master, I can only use this dagger attack." Garen, due to the harsh weather, 90% of the icefield creatures had a very high frost resistance. Garen was directly immune to the damage of the ice dagger and was not even scratched. He could only use a trash spell ability, and it was an ice attribute attack. In the northern ice fields, he could definitely only survive as the lowest level creature. In terms of strength, the Northern Ice Spirit could not even defeat the Terror Lizard. After pondering for a moment, Garen asked, "How was your tribe born?" Roy Ice River revealed a respectful expression as he replied, "1,000 years ago, a respected mage created our ancestor and left us on the ice fields. Created and not summoned. This meant that the northern ice spirit was not born naturally." Garen guessed that this group of elemental life forms was most likely the product of a failed experiment by an unknown mage. That mage might have wanted to create an elemental life form that could use powerful frost magic. After discovering that the northern ice spirit was weak, he decisively abandoned it. No wonder the white dragon mother did not take these guys in as her servants. She doesn't fancy the strength of the northern ice spirits, right? Garen thought to himself. At the same time, he decided to give these pitiful elemental life forms a chance to work for him. It was not good to be so weak. With this thought, Garen spat out the frost dragon breath. A large number of ice crystals appeared with the cold wind, condensing into an ice pool with a diameter of a few meters under his subtle control. Ordinary white dragons definitely could not do this, but Garen was already used to it. With the time dragon physique, he was favored and blessed by the elements. To be more precise, he was like the master of the elements. The elements that were cold and difficult to control to other creatures were as enthusiastic as fire in front of Garen. With a casual thought, they would faithfully execute his orders. There was no hesitation, and the elements in the space near Garen would even become active or depressed according to his mood. After getting out of the ice pool, Garen pierced his fingertip and squeezed out a few drops of boiling dragon blood. Roy Ice River realized what Garen wanted to do, and his breathing immediately became heavy. He knelt on the ground and said to Garen in a fanatical tone, "Master, the Ice River tribe will become your most loyal servant and crush all enemies for you." The dragon blood dripped into the ice pool and almost melted the ice. Immediately, Garen got some water from the meandering ice river. The ice pool was immediately filled with light red diluted dragon blood. "This is enough for your tribesmen to transform." Garen lowered his eyes and said calmly, "If they accepted his bloodline, the other party would become dragon blood creatures." True dragons had a special blood vessel called the base blood vessel. It was a very unique and powerful biological tissue. It was thought to be the core meridian of a true dragon using elemental power, giving a true dragon powerful spell-like ability and supernatural power. It was also the most effective way to distinguish a true dragon from various pseudo-dragons. The dragon blood flowing in the base blood vessels was extremely invasive. Even elemental life forms could transform. The creatures transformed from dragon blood were collectively called dragon blood creatures. They would worship the master of the dragon blood to the greatest extent from the bottom of their hearts. The dragon blood creatures were also the true core servants of the true dragon. Those that had not been transformed were mostly treated as food reserves or cannon fodder. Will my dragon blood give them a bit of the power to affect time? Garen thought to himself and waited. As time passed, the northern ice spirits bathed in Garen's diluted dragon blood one after another. There was a faint dragon's might aura on their bodies, and they officially became dragon blood creatures. Next, the northern ice spirits pledged their allegiance to Garen in groups. Their faces were filled with the joy of new life, along with reverence and loyalty to him. At this point, he had his first batch of intelligent servants. Near the rising and falling ice houses, the figures of the terror lizard, the white hound, and the tidal crab continuously passed through. They got along very well with the northern ice spirits. Garen chose the location of the nest to be at the river near the Ice River tribe and gathered the other subdued servants here. The strength and potential of the northern ice spirit that had received the dragon blood transformation had increased greatly. However, what disappointed Garen was that these were all displayed in ice spells. None of the northern ice spirits displayed the ability to affect time. What they accepted seemed to be only the white dragon bloodline, and they did not obtain a trace of the time dragon bloodline. However, after his initial disappointment, Garen was quickly relieved. If it was so easy to obtain a bloodline that affected time, the time dragon would not be treated as a legendary true dragon. There seemed to be huge beasts surging under the cold and deep river, causing a surging wave to rise on the surface of the meandering ice river. An 8-meter-long white shadow could be vaguely seen under the water. It was Garen. In a short 2 months, although he did not obtain any new time-type ability, his body had expanded greatly. His muscular dragon body was 8 meters from head to toe, and his shoulders were 1.6 meters tall when he was on all fours. His wingspan was nearly 10 meters, and he had grasped a spell-like ability that only adolescent white dragons could possess. This growth speed was enough to shock all the true dragons. His main food now was the giant feet yak captured by the hunting team formed by the northern ice spirit with the terror lizard, the white hound, and other servants. The giant feet yak was 4 meters long and weighed 3 tons. When it ran, the sound was like thunder. It was not to be trifled with, but it was not a match for Garen's servants. 90% of the Ice River tribe's members were busy hunting food for Garen, but they could only barely satisfy him. From time to time, he needed to hunt some magical creatures to eat. On the other hand, as the lord of this place, it was not like Garen did nothing. For example, when the hunting team encountered some powerful magical creatures, Garen would attack and kill them after confirming that he could deal with them. Or when a powerful, ferocious beast coveted the tribe and the Ice River tribe was helpless to deal with it, Garen would also attack at his own discretion. Such situations were very rare. It had only happened once in 2 months. At this moment, Garen was chasing a group of fish under the Ice River. This was a group of strong, fat, and long Ice River sharks of about 2 meters in length. Although their mouths were filled with interlaced fangs, they did not have any spell-like ability and were only ordinary beasts. Under Garen's agile pursuit, they were completely helpless, like fish on a stick. This Ice River shark tasted very good. The meat was delicious, cold, and easy to capture. It was a food he liked to eat very much. However, because there were not many, Garen only ate them as a treat to satisfy his craving. Crack! After biting 2 Ice River sharks at the same time, Garen chewed slightly and ate them. The remaining Ice River sharks panicked and hurriedly fled. As for Garen, he did not continue to chase. He only savored the delicious taste and turned to dive into a dragon nest at the bottom of the river. The dragon nest was built in the deepest part of this ice river, about 50 meters away from the river. It emitted a faint cold light at the bottom of the dark river. This was created by Garen after spending a day excavating and digging a pit. Then he used his frost dragon breath to coat it with a layer of sparkling ice crystals. Although it was a little bent, it was in an L shape. The deepest part of the dragon nest was where Garen slept. The structure of a dragon's eyes was special. There was a waterproof membrane under its eyelids, and its pupils had a crystal structure that could gather light. It could also gather enough light in the darkness to see in the dark. Although it was very dark underwater, it could not block Garen's vision. To him, it only seemed a little dim, but he could still see things clearly. In the deepest part of the dragon nest, Garen learned from the white dragon mother and built an ice bed that could accommodate him. Because the temperature of the river water in the northern ice field was very low, the ice in this water was extremely difficult to melt. He only needed to spend a small amount of effort to maintain it. On Garen's large ice bed, it was not empty. There was also a tattered armor filled with rusty iron ingots that were difficult to remove and a similar rusty sword. After lying on the ice bed, Garen played with the rusty armor and sword, feeling the dense time energy contained in them. As he gently rubbed it, he revealed a satisfied expression. These 2 things were dug out of the sand at the bottom of the river when Garen was building the cave. At first glance, Garen was attracted to them. What he liked was not them themselves, but the traces of time left on them. To Garen, such items that had a long history were even more attractive than gold coins and gems. Of course, gold coins and gems were also attractive to Garen to a certain extent, but they were not as special as special items that had experienced many years. If there were gold coins or gems that had been passed down for a long time, it would be best. Standing beside this collection, Garen felt that the speed at which he devoured time had vaguely increased. When he used abilities like time manipulation and time plundering breath, he had to consume the power of time. The speed at which he devoured time was a relatively important factor to Garen. I can bury them and dig them out again after a long time. Then, they'll contain more traces of time. Garen thought to himself. However, because he had too few in his collection at the moment, he was unwilling to really do this. Next, Garen hugged his beloved collection and began to close his eyes to sleep. He quickly digested the few giant feet yaks and ice river sharks he had just eaten. The total weight of the food was slightly heavier than Garen's body weight. Dragons could eat creatures that were more than their weight at once. Half a day later, Garen was almost asleep. He opened his eyes and reluctantly left the ice bed. He placed the rusty armor and sword that were filled with the traces of time beside him. Coupled with the fact that the dragon's tail was already 8 meters long, he passed through the water like a nimble fish. The dragon wings were folded on both sides, and Garen quickly left the water in a shuttle-shaped posture. Whoosh! The crystal-clear water droplets that filled the sky slid down the white scales, causing Garen's strong dragon body to look like a god that had descended to the mortal world. When the few northern ice spirits saw Garen, they lowered their heads respectfully and said, "Praise the great true dragon." After Garen treated this place as his territory and took the northern ice spirits as his servants, their lives improved at a visible speed. Creatures like the terror lizard and the white hound that could originally hunt them as toys had now become existences similar to pets. The protection of a true dragon, even if it was underage, was a rare thing. After receiving the protection and dragon blood transformation, the northern ice spirits paid with their own manpower. They were elemental life forms and did not need flesh and food. They could only survive by absorbing the ice elements that were abundant in the air of the northern ice field. It was very easy to feed them. As for their hunting gains, meat-like creatures were used to feed the brainless servants like the terror lizards. Fat and delicious meat, like the giant feet yaks, were given to Garen as food. Garen did not respond to the praise of the few northern ice spirits. As a true dragon, he did not need to respond to his servants' respect. He just needed to accept it. Waving his dragon wings, Garen left further north and flew to a place far away from the small ice river where no servants could see. He used his dragon claw to dig through the snow, revealing the grayish-brown frozen ground below. Then, he dug a small pit in the frozen ground. Next, he held his spiked chin with a dragon claw and looked deeply at the flawless night sky in the distance. He exerted a little strength and thought about his life. The dragon excreted with strong momentum. After a thunderous sound, a comfortable expression appeared on Garen's dragon face. He had eaten a lot. After absorbing the essence and nutrition, there was a lot of waste in his body. A few minutes later, Garen left behind the precious dragon feces that would make the white hounds overjoyed. He coughed lightly and did not even turn around. At the same time, his dragon tail swept over a large area of snow, covering the precious dragon feces. Sigh. There are no toilets in the wilderness. I can only make do with this. Proper dragons would fly high in the air from time to time. Occasionally, they would hit 1 or 2 lucky ones and give them a chance to come into contact with the aura of a true dragon. However, although Garen had become a dragon, he still felt a little ashamed to do that. He felt that it did not seem appropriate to defecate in the wild. It was really impossible for him to do in the sky. However, there was no good solution now unless he could survive by breathing in time or elemental energy without eating solid food. Settling it in the ice river was the least eye-catching and safe, but Garen did not want to discover them in his nest one day. After relieving his body of the burden, Garen prepared to leave and return to the ice river domain. Before he left, he suddenly felt an aura gradually approaching from behind. His gaze immediately focused, and he turned around. A 9-foot-tall and roughly 3-meter-tall humanoid creature was quietly approaching him. After being discovered by Garen, the two of them looked at each other. It still maintained its posture of walking closer, and the atmosphere froze for a moment. Yuga Bone Crusher was an ogre from a small ogre gathering place with a total population of about 40, the Bone Crusher tribe. It had just become an adult and needed powerful prey to prove its courage and strength so that it could show off its muscles to the other ogres and obtain a higher status in the Bone Crusher tribe, as well as the right to choose a spouse. Yuga Bone Crusher had always thought that he was very smart. Apart from the leader of the Bone Crusher tribe, the two-headed ogre who could use spells, no other ogre was smarter than it. In a group of not-so-intelligent ogres, Yuga Bone Crusher always felt that he was incompatible with them. As for the smarter leader, Yuga Bone Crusher felt that it was because it had two heads and he only had one, so it was acceptable that he could not compare to the other party. One day, looking at the two-headed ogre leader who could get together with female ogres at will and even order other ogres around, a bold idea arose in his mind. If Garen knew his thoughts, he would describe it in a suitable sentence. If you're a man, you should take over. After this thought appeared, it was like a wildfire growing in Yuga Bone Crusher's heart. According to the tradition of the Bone Crusher tribe, after they became adults, they would have the chance to challenge the leader. After defeating the leader, they could replace him and become the new leader. However, the two-headed ogre leader was the strongest leader in the history of the Bone Crusher tribe. It even had a throne made of the skulls of challengers. Yuga Bone Crusher would not be as rash as the other challengers. He planned to wait for the leader to age and challenge him when he was weak. However, before that, he needed to prove that he was a true adult ogre and settle his coming-of-age ceremony. The strong Yuga can even hunt a dragon. Yuga Bone Crusher bragged to the clansmen, then strode away and stepped onto the ice field under the worship of the other ogres. Along the way, with the strong body of an ogre and his mind that was much smarter than ordinary ogres, Yuga Bone Crusher had either created traps or ambushed many hunters on the ice field. However, he was not satisfied. This was because the two-headed ogre leader had once killed an ice python that was nearly 10 meters long and as thick as a bucket. It was stronger than all his prey so far. Up until just now, after he left the Bone Crusher tribe for 100 miles, he actually saw a little white dragon excreting. Yuga Bone Crusher knew the power of a true dragon, even if the other party was the weakest white dragon. He turned around and left, pretending not to see anything. However, when he recalled that his bold words really had a chance of success, he thought of the scene of the ogres surrounding him and the favor of the chubby ogre beauties. He decided to use the thick wooden hammer he carried to sneak attack the little white dragon in front of him. As long as the sneak attack succeeded, he would have a chance to fulfill his dream. The history of the Bone Crusher tribe will rely on me, Yuga Bone Crusher, because I hunted a true dragon when I became an adult. Yuga Bone Crusher fantasized in his mind. At the same time, he quietly walked forward and carefully approached the little white dragon. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, before he could take a step, he saw the little white dragon suddenly turn around, its eyes filled with piercingly cold, killing intent. Yuga Bone Crusher was stunned. Then, his mind was filled with all kinds of records regarding the dragon, and he became frightened. He squeezed out a forced smile and said to Garen awkwardly, "Honorable true dragon, I, Yuga Bone Crusher, am only passing by. I don't have any ill intentions." As he spoke, he quietly hid the wooden hammer behind him, but he seemed guilty nonetheless. Garen turned his dragon body around to face the creature in front of him. He was 9 feet tall, human-shaped, and had dark, rough skin. His body was burly and powerful, and his muscles were all over his body. His eyes were white with pitch-black pupils. His entire body stank, and his mouth was filled with fangs. He was wearing simple and crude beast skin, and he held a black wooden hammer that was still stained with dried blood. After seeing that he had been discovered, the ogre muttered in a language that Garen did not understand. The dragon inheritance only had the dragon language and common language. Large human-like creatures like the ogres spoke the giant language. Garen did not learn the giant language, so he could not understand. After saying that, the ogre forced an extremely ugly smile. "You're laughing at me?" Garen was furious. His expression was not good at all. In an instant, he flapped his wings and approached. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of frost. Many people thought that dragon breath was an ordinary ability of dragons. It was a method similar to the sweep of a huge tail and the flapping of dragon wings. However, this was a misunderstanding. The dragon breath was not an ordinary skill. Instead, it was extremely powerful and difficult to resist. It was the symbol of the dragon race that any creature had to treat seriously, and it was equivalent to a big move. Even an adult dragon could not maintain its dragon breath for long. Garen used a powerful move from the start. Under the other party's shocked gaze, the cone-shaped frost breath instantly covered the ogre's body and froze it in thick ice crystals. Soon, he returned to the sky above the territory. After aiming at an empty space without any servants, Garen released his dragon claw. Bang! The large ice crystal that was grabbed by his single claw fell and smashed a depression in the ground. The commotion attracted the attention of many northern ice spirits, but when they saw that their lord had returned, they went to do their own things as if nothing had happened. In the ice crystal, the ogre's body was lifelike, and its face was filled with fear. Garen retracted his dragon wings and landed below, sizing up the ice crystal in front of him. He had shown mercy to the ogre and did not kill it. He only froze it alive. As for the reason for this, it was not that Garen suddenly liked the ogre, but that he restrained his anger the moment he spat out his breath. He recalled that ogres were grouped creatures and rarely appeared alone. The appearance of an ogre meant that there was an ogre tribe in this area. Ogre tribe, this northern ice fields really won't let me live in peace. Garen did not want to wake up after sleeping and discover that his territory had been wiped out by the ogres. Then, he would be surrounded by a group of ogres and cooked in a pot with onions, ginger, and garlic. He looked at the frozen ogre in front of him. After thinking for a moment, he controlled the ice crystal to turn into magical elements and gradually melt. Plop! The ogre fell to the ground. There were still some traces of frostbite on its body, but its outstanding physique made it open its eyes a few minutes later and look at its surroundings in a daze. When it looked up and saw Garen's dragon body, the ogre seemed to be shocked. It casually threw the wooden club away and kowtowed to Garen, speaking in the giant language that the dragon did not understand. Garen held his chin with his dragon claw and observed the ogre kneeling on the ground in front of him, feeling a little strange. This ogre doesn't seem to be that stupid. The dragon inheritance recorded the details of ogres. What was most reminiscent of them was their rash, impulsive, and stupid personalities, as well as their strong bodies that could adapt to most climate environments. On the Noah continent, which was the place where Garen was, the footprints of the ogres were almost everywhere in the forest, swamp, desert, and frozen plain. It was a very common race. After thinking for a moment, Garen spread his dragon wings, and the shadow enveloped the ogre's body. While the ogre was trembling, Garen said in the Noah common language, "Do you speak the common language?" Hearing Garen's voice, the ogre looked up in confusion. Looking at its reaction, Garen frowned secretly. He knew that this guy definitely only knew one language. Since the language was different, it was difficult to ask for information about the ogre tribe. There was not much use in keeping it. It was better to give the terror lizards and white hounds in the Ice River territory an additional meal. The ogre had a stench and an extremely ugly appearance. Garen could not eat it. With this thought, Garen looked at the ogre with a gradually dangerous gaze. This ogre was indeed not as stupid as ordinary ogres. It acutely saw through Garen's thoughts, and its expression immediately froze as it hurriedly spoke nonsense. When he heard some repeating words, Garen's gaze moved slightly. "True dragon? Spare me." For some reason, this was the first time he had heard the giant language. He did not know anything about it before, but with his current environment and the many words spoken by the ogre, Garen was very sure that he understood some of the words. He recalled the legend of the time dragon in the dragon inheritance again. Any knowledge, skill, or language was a skill that belonged to the time dragon. In terms of language, I seem to have extraordinary talent. Garen realized this and gradually restrained his killing intent. As for why he only realized this now, it was because the knowledge of the dragon's inheritance was not completely stuffed into the dragon's mind. It was more like a treasure vault hidden in his mind. When it was triggered in a specific environment, the relevant information would naturally appear in his mind. It was a knowledge inheritance that was unlocked by conditions. At the same time, the ogre felt the fatal danger fade and heaved a sigh of relief. However, as soon as it stopped begging, it was stared at by Garen's sharp platinum dragon eyes and lowered its head to beg for mercy again. After thinking for a moment, Garen stopped the ogre from begging for mercy and used his hand gestures to communicate with the little vocabulary he had just learned. After all, it was an intelligent creature. Although the language was different, he could understand some of the general meaning through gestures and actions. Moreover, Garen had just learned a little of the giant language. At first, it was a little difficult, but after the ogre understood that Garen wanted to learn his own language, it slowly became simple. Garen pointed at the ground. The ogre was stunned. Then he spoke in giant language, Barakan. The meaning was the earth. He looked up at the sky again. The ogre understood and looked at the dark and cloudless night. Lacus, the sky. Just like that, time slowly passed. Garen was like a child who had obtained a new toy as he curiously learned a new language. He understood each word and relied on the words to interpret the sentences. He grasped more sentences and learned grammatical structures. Moreover, the more foundation he knew, the faster his learning process became. 3 days later, Garen could already communicate simply with the ogre. Although his giant language was still a little rigid, daily communication was possible. Throughout the entire learning process, he did not feel impatient at all. Instead, he felt excited and happy because he had obtained new knowledge. The joy was so good that it surprised Garen. On the other hand, Garen was surprised by his talent in language. He had actually roughly understood a language by relying on the ogre's description. If I had this ability in my previous life, or even just the joy of learning new knowledge, speaking of which, he had already grasped 5 languages. The Noah Common Language, Dragon Language, Giant Language, Chinese, and English. There was no need to say much about Chinese, and English was something he originally had a certain foundation in. At this moment, with the talent of the time dragon and language, he understood it without a teacher and grasped it at a deeper level. Thinking of this, Garen could not help but shake his head and throw the past to the back of his mind. After focusing his mind, Garen looked at the haggard and weak-looking ogre and said in giant language, "Yuga, how many people are there in your Bone Crusher tribe?" As he spoke, he waved his hand and gestured for the northern ice spirits to carry a portion of food for the terror lizards and the white hounds. A basin of squirming fat ice fieldworms. These ice fieldworms lived under the snow and usually relied on eating snow to survive, but the meat was still considered fat. Under Garen's guidance, the northern ice spirits raised them as daily food for their pets. As long as he did not mind that white and chubby body filled with juice, the taste was not bad. Garen would occasionally eat it as a snack. It was cold in his mouth, and the meat was delicious. There was also a fresh snow fragrance. There are a total of 44 people in our Bone Crusher tribe. Our leader is the 2-headed ogre, and we also have 22 male adult ogres, 10 female adult ogres, and 11 underage ogres. This trader bluntly sold out the information of his tribe. A 2-headed ogre? Garen was shocked. In the ogre race, most of them were boorish ogre warriors who played with large wooden clubs like Yuga Bone Crusher. However, occasionally, subspecies with extremely high intelligence and could master spells would be called ogre sorcerers. An ogre sorcerer was not necessarily a 2-headed ogre, but a 2-headed ogre was definitely an ogre sorcerer. Apart from strong body, they also grasped the ability to cast spells. This was because they had 2 heads and could multitask. They were much stronger than ordinary ogre sorcerers. On the Noah continent, only mages who knew how to cast spells had the right to speak. Those who knew spells above the 9th tier were walking nuclear bombs. They were respected wherever they went and could influence the decisions of the kingdom with a word. The most respected identity would always be a mage. Reality was not a game, and there was no need to consider the balance of professions. A rich mage on the Noah continent could defeat more than 10 warriors of the same level. Apart from combat ability, spells could also do many strange things. For example, teleportation arrays, city shields, otherworld summoning, and so on. 2-headed ogre, that's troublesome. According to Garen's understanding, ordinary young dragons did not have much chance of winning against a two-headed ogre. If that two-headed ogre grasped a high-level spell, it would be even more troublesome. As for ordinary ogres, although they were all strong, they were not much of a threat to him. Thinking of this, Garen revealed a thoughtful expression. After pondering for a moment, he asked, "How far is the Bone Crusher tribe from here?" Yuga scratched his head and said, "Not far. Only more than 50 kilometers." More than 50 kilometers was a relatively long journey for ordinary people. However, to creatures like Garen and the ogre, it was a very small number. Before Garen could ask further, Yuga's next words made his expression change slightly. "The tribesmen occasionally hunt near this ice river. There's a water source here, and there is abundant prey coming and going." Creatures of different races had different habits and customs. The ogres were a race that liked filth and did not like water. Otherwise, when Garen discovered the small ice river, the ogres would definitely have occupied it. At the same time, Garen frowned and his heart sank. Didn't that mean that he could face the threat of the ogre tribe at any time? It was fine usually, but if the ogres discovered the location of the nest while he was sleeping, it would be very dangerous. That two-headed ogre needed to be guarded against. Garen thought for a moment and said in a low voice, "Tell me everything you know about the ability of the two-headed ogre leader." Yuga's eyes lit up. He clearly knew that Garen wanted to deal with his leader, but under Garen's strange gaze, he actually said very happily, "Our leader is called Thyra Bone Crusher. He's about the same height as me." A few minutes later, Yuga Bone Crusher told Garen the information about the two-headed ogre in detail and looked at him with anticipation. Garen pondered for a moment and did not speak. A moment later, he looked at Yuga Bone Crusher with interest and said, "Tell me, why are you so enthusiastic about telling me information?" Yuga Bone Crusher scratched his head in embarrassment and grinned foolishly. "I want to be the leader. He's the greatest obstacle in my way." After a pause, Yuga Bone Crusher sincerely knelt on the ground and said to Garen, "Great true dragon, if you can kill Thyra and let me become the leader of the Bone Crusher tribe, I swear to you in the name of the Sun God that the Bone Crusher tribe will respect and follow your orders." Sun God? Garen was slightly stunned. Since when did ogres worship the Sun God? Wasn't it the god of strength or the god of courage? Moreover, there was no real sun god on the Noah continent. Garen was a little puzzled. In his dragon inheritance, there was no such god. However, Garen did not think too much about this. After all, there were many gods on the Noah continent and countless religions. Perhaps this sun god was a new god that had recently appeared, so there was no record in the dragon inheritance. However, no matter what, daring to swear in the name of God was not a small matter, regardless of whether it was a true god or a false god. Those who broke the oath would definitely be cursed by the gods. In a world with gods, swearing in the name of a god was the most serious contract. It was not something that could be casually said. As for the matter of killing the two-headed ogre leader that Yuga Bone Crusher mentioned, Garen was a little tempted. This was because according to the description of the two-headed ogre leader, although it could cast spells, the only spell it could use was the forked lightning bolt. Thinking about it, it made sense. How could spells be so easy to master? Although the two-headed ogre was a rare subspecies, it was not a very outstanding magical creature. After having a certain understanding of the two-headed ogre through Yuga Bone Crusher, Garen was already thinking of a strategy to deal with it. How could he allow strong enemies to exist near him? Moreover, it was the ferocious ogre tribe that ate everything. Of course, if this tribe was controlled by him, it was a good thing. The ogre's overall strength far exceeded all of Garen's current servants. After subduing them, they could resolve many issues for Garen. In the current Ice River domain, after the northern ice spirits transformed into dragon blood creatures, although their strength was growing day by day, they had just started after all and were still too weak. The Terror Lizard and White Hound pets were not very strong. The addition of the ogre tribe could greatly increase the strength of the Ice River domain. If they encountered any trouble, Garen did not have to take action to resolve it. In addition, as his body grew, his appetite became greater. The current hunting results of his servants were already a little difficult to satisfy Garen's appetite. He needed more servants. Before I sleep next time, I'll destroy or subdue this ogre tribe. After a short thought, Garen made a decision. He looked at Yuga Bone Crusher without any change in expression and asked calmly, "How's the strength of the adult ogres in the Bone Crusher tribe compared to you?" Yuga Bone Crusher was stunned and said, "Apart from the leader, I am already the strongest ogre." Although he had just become an adult, he was already invincible in the tribe. Otherwise, he would not have thought of replacing the leader. Garen sized up Yuga's body. 3 meters tall, with hard, bulging muscles under the simple tanned animal skin clothes. The height of an adult ogre was about 2.6 to 3 meters. Yuga Bone Crusher was indeed tall among the ogres. Yuga Bone Crusher had intelligence that was not inferior to ordinary people and was much smarter than ordinary ogres. He observed the situation and guessed Garen's intentions. To Yuga Bone Crusher, his encounter in the past few days was simply a dream. First, he had provoked the true dragon and was about to be unlucky enough to die in its stomach. Then, he discovered that the true dragon actually did not kill him. Instead, it stunned the ogre to the extreme that it learned the giant language in a short few days and even gave it a chance to replace the two-headed ogre. He had almost gone crazy wanting to be the leader, so he naturally would not let go of such a good opportunity. Moreover, it was not shameful to submit to a true dragon, even if it was an underage true dragon. Garen nodded calmly. Seeing that Yuga Bone Crusher wanted to say something but hesitated, he said in a low voice, "Tell me what you think." He had already seen that Yuga Bone Crusher was different from ordinary ogres and did not underestimate his brain. Yuga Bone Crusher nodded happily, then patted his chest and said confidently in a muffled voice, "I know Thyra's hobbies and habits. We can trick him out of the tribe. As long as Lord True Dragon can kill Thyra, all the ogres of the Bone Crusher tribe will become your loyal servants." Garen looked at Yuga in surprise and thought to himself that this guy was really a traitor. In order to be the leader, he did not hesitate to sell the entire tribe to the dragon. If that two-headed ogre knows that the tribe has such a traitor, Garen shook his head and mourned for the two-headed ogre. After thinking for a moment, Garen asked for more information about the two-headed ogre. Then, he got Yuga Bone Crusher to point out the approximate location of the Bone Crusher tribe and let him stay in the Ice River domain for the time being. He flapped his dragon wings, and his figure disappeared into the vast night sky. In the air, Garen lowered his head to look at the Ice River domain that had already turned into a black dot. Then, he retracted his gaze and flew towards the Bone Crusher tribe. He did not leave any restrictive spells on Yuga Bone Crusher. Garen did not know any of such spells at the moment, and he did not restrict the movement of the latter. He only verbally let it stay in the Ice River domain. This was also a test to see if this ogre really wanted to use Garen's strength to become the leader of the tribe. If he was really smart enough, when Garen returned to the Ice River territory, he would still see his figure on the spot. Otherwise, Garen could only think of a way to destroy the entire Bone Crusher tribe and not subdue them. Whoosh! Thousands of meters in the air, the whistling of the cold wind could be heard. Without the help of spells, adult dragons could fly at full speed for a few days. If they could control their speed and continuously fly in the air for half a month, as long as they did not find it boring, they could even fly for an entire year. This terrifying endurance was because the dragon had a powerful heart as the source of its power. There were 4 huge ventricles in the dragon's heart that were constantly pumping, providing endless strength to the dragon's body. Due to the strength of the dragon heart, some scholars who study dragons even describe that if a hard rock was placed in the heart of an ancient dragon, the dragon heart could crush it into powder with a single beat. Garen's dragon wings, which were 10 meters long, were completely extended. He used the airflow to glide, and his speed was not very fast. He was only a young dragon, so it was still impossible for him to fly at full speed for a few days. In order to maintain his stamina that could deal with accidents, Garen chose the most energy-saving glide. Although his speed was much slower, it was stable. Moreover, Garen was not in a hurry. Due to the unique night environment, the northern ice fields had been enveloped by the night sky, so it was a little difficult to distinguish the time. However, Garen had an outstanding sense of time and space. He was relatively sensitive to the flow of time and the change of space, so he would not misjudge the time. He looked down and saw a strange, small depression basin. The ice basin was in the shape of a bowl, and small, messy black dots could be vaguely seen inside. True dragons had a long-range vision. As long as there were no obstacles in the middle, as long as one focused, they could see the scattered snow thousands of meters away. Garen looked over and clearly saw that those black dots were simple and crude houses built casually with rocks. There were also strong ogres surrounding the bonfire with large iron pots scattered around. Yellow thick soup rolled in the large iron pot. Occasionally, the limbs of some unknown ice-field beasts could be seen, looking very terrifying. Ogres did not only eat humanoid creatures. They ate everything that was weaker than them and could be hunted. Some of the ogres located in the deep mountains and forests might have never eaten humanoid creatures in their lives. In the center of the Bone Crusher tribe, in a large stone house that was covered in a few layers of animal skin at the top and looked relatively extraordinary, a 3-meter-tall ogre was praying piously to a wooden ball-shaped black statue and chanting. Its rough dark skin and signature black eyes and white pupils were no different from other ogres. The only difference was that it had 2 heads that were close together, one large and one small. Their eyes were closed as they prayed to the statue. Suddenly, the 2-headed ogre seemed to have felt something and suddenly opened its eyes. The eyes of the large head flickered with a light that was more intelligent than the eyes of the small head. It picked up a long staff from the weapon shelf in the house, a large hammer covered in frozen blood, and strode out of the house, looking around suspiciously. After discovering nothing abnormal, the 2-headed ogre raised its head and looked at the sky at the same time. However, other than clouds that did not have any presence, there were only stars in the vast vision. "Leader, what are you looking at? Is there food in the sky?" An ogre approached and looked up like a 2-headed ogre. After seeing nothing, it asked strangely. Blue light circulated in the 2-headed ogre's eyes as it continuously looked at the night sky. After a few minutes, it retracted its gaze. The 2 heads looked at each other and shook. "It's nothing. It's just a feeling." After saying that, it returned to the stone house, put away its weapon, and continued to pray sincerely. As the 2-headed ogre prayed, in a world that ordinary people could not see, threads of black fog stretched out from the sculpture and touched the 2-headed ogre's body like tentacles. Every touch made the 2-headed ogre's body tremble slightly, and the pious expression on its ugly face became even stronger. In the sky, Garen was surrounded by a dim cloud that seemed to have fused with the night. When he saw the 2-headed ogre rush out of the house and look in his direction suspiciously, his heart skipped a beat. This 2-headed ogre is not weak. It can vaguely sense me from so far away. If not for the cloud mist technique, which he had grasped after waking up from his sleep, Garen would have been exposed. It was a type of spell ability that a white dragon could master when it was young. It was best used with aura concealment to move around stealthily. Garen had comprehended it when he was still a young dragon. Of course, his current size was not inferior to ordinary young white dragons, and it even slightly exceeded them. Without removing the cloud mist technique, Garen circled above the Bone Crusher tribe for a moment and carefully sized up the situation. 10 minutes later, he nodded imperceptibly and confirmed that the number of adult ogres here was indeed as Yuga had said. After thinking for a moment, Garen turned around and left. However, he did not return to the Ice River domain directly. Instead, he used the Bone Crusher tribe as the center and searched the surrounding 20 miles. He did not fly fast, but carefully looked down and scanned the various terrain of the ice plain. Garen was looking for a suitable location to set up an ambush. Although dragons were naturally powerful, they did not like to expose themselves head-on and directly fight. On the contrary, dragons like sudden attacks like falling from the sky or breaking out of the ground. Although it had scales and wings, many of the characteristics of a dragon were more like a cat than a worm. Time passed bit by bit. About an hour and a half later, Garen's body froze and his eyes revealed joy. He retracted his dragon wings and dispersed the clouds around him before diving down. Soon, Garen landed on an extremely smooth ice surface. He turned his neck and looked around. Under his feet was the surface of the lake covered in ice crystals, covering a radius of several kilometers. In the northern ice fields, because of the low temperature, it was very easy to freeze in a water lake like the one under his feet. Only in the warmest short period of time, every year, would the ice crystals melt and reveal the lake water. This place was the most suitable place for an ambush for the white dragon. Because there was no snowstorm recently, the snow on the ground was not thick enough to hide the dragon's body. If he ambushed in the water that the ogres hated, attacking from under the ice was the best choice. After landing on the ice, Garen carefully moved his body and was surprised to discover that the ice could actually support his weight. At first, he thought that the ice was hard enough, but after walking and even running for a while, Garen discovered that he was wrong. He could move freely on the ice without much effect, mainly relying on his dragon body. The moment Garen's dragon claw touched the ice, it produced a strange force to support his body. Moreover, the scaled claw increased the friction, allowing him to move freely on the smooth ice. He was even faster than when he moved on the ground normally, coming and going like the wind. Walking on ice was a special ability belonging to the white dragon. Special abilities referred to the ability to be completely unaffected by spells and not be affected by anti-magic or magic-free areas. Garen could walk on the ice mainly because of his unique physical structure, like the ability to see through distance and darkness, not spells or supernatural powers. After sliding on the ice for a moment, Garen flapped his dragon wings and soared into the sky, returning to the Ice River domain. He had spent a total of a few hours on this trip. If the ogre, Yuga Bone Crusher, wanted to take the opportunity to escape, he should have long left the Ice River domain and fled. However, when Garen looked down from the sky, he still saw a familiar tall figure. Yuga Bone Crusher was sparring with the northern ice spirit, Roy Ice River. He cried out loudly and charged towards Roy Ice River like a tank. As he moved, the ground shook slightly, and his momentum was not weak. Fear appeared on Roy Ice River's humanoid, ice crystal face. He stretched out his hand, and the elemental power in the surrounding space instantly gathered. A series of ice cones shot out from its palm like machine guns. They were many times stronger than the ice dagger that had shown Garen more than 2 months ago. Unfortunately, when the dense ice cones landed on the skin of Yuga Bone Crusher, they only made him grimace in pain, leaving white marks on the rough, dark skin, but they did not really break. The skin of the ogre was very tough and fleshy. It was difficult for the ice cones shot out by Roy Ice River to leave any truly effective injuries. A few seconds later, Yuga Bone Crusher strode forward and rushed to the front of the Northern Ice Spirit. He grabbed Roy Ice River with one hand and laughed loudly. In the giant language, he said, "Little guy, I won. If you want to defeat the future leader of the Yuga Bone Crusher, you're still far from it." Roy Ice River did not understand giant language, but from his expression, he roughly guessed the meaning of Yuga Bone Crusher's words. Although it had lost, it was happy about its increasingly powerful ability after becoming a dragon blood creature. One had to know that before this, if he saw an ogre, it would be difficult for him to have any thoughts of fighting. He could only take a detour and leave. However, now he could barely fight. There was no unwillingness to admit defeat. Roy Ice River, who was made of ice crystals, only said in distress, "Put me down. I admit defeat." The ogre was very strong and could carry a few tons of things as if it was playing. When he was grabbed by it, Roy Ice River felt like he would be crushed into ice at any time. Although the Northern Ice Spirit would not die before its magic power was exhausted, it was a bad experience in the end. Yuga Bone Crusher raised his head proudly. Because he did not understand the common language, he did not know what Roy Ice River was saying and only continued to laugh. Roy Ice River was about to make some gestures to let the ogre understand when his face suddenly lit up and he looked behind Yuga Bone Crusher in reverence. Yuga Bone Crusher's expression froze as he saw the shadow that stretched out from behind and covered his shadow. He slowly let go of Roy Ice River and mechanically turned his neck slowly. Lord True Dragon, you're back. A smile appeared on Yuga Bone Crusher's ugly face. He was shocked in his heart and discovered that although the true dragon's body was huge, it could fall without any sound. Garen's face was expressionless as he said, "You seem to be getting along well with my servant." Yuga Bone Crusher scratched his head and said in embarrassment, "The other ogres in the tribe are too stupid. Your servants are as smart as me. I like to communicate with them." Although they did not speak the same language, just the communication of their gestures made Yuga Bone Crusher feel that the Northern Eye Spirit was easier to communicate with than the ogres in the tribe. It also had the thought of learning the common language and wanted to communicate with other intelligent creatures. Garen ignored the ogre and looked at Roy Ice River. He encouraged, "Although you're not the ogre's match yet, your strength still has a lot of room to grow. You won't be weaker than the ogre in the future. Continue to work hard." A simple encouragement made a rich expression of gratitude appear on Roy Ice River's face. Motivation from a true dragon was not common. Immediately, Garen grabbed the shoulder of Yuga Bone Crusher with his claw. Under a puzzled gaze, his dragon wings shook and flew into the sky. The ogre's weight was like a toy under the dragon's claw as it was quickly brought into the air while trembling.